This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking.
And Seppy Yoon in the third chair.
I'm just happy to be here.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer
Welcome
nonsense.
to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, covered at the speed of a fierce high fashion powered by lasers. Pew, pew, pew. Woo. Today's edition is brought to you by Andrew Gray, Ray Greenlee, Ben Greenman, Nolan Gregory, and Kyle Gruppenhoff of the patron fame. Thanks, guys, for helping us keep the lights on. I'm Geekly McGurdigan, your host. Today's our panelists are Russ, Vivian Westwood Wakelin, and game designer, PR pitchman, and curse breaker par excellence, Seppy Yoon. Let's begin. Issue number 1, a little considered result of our expansion into the great cosmos. The need for interstellar police has until now been a shadowy subplot to the vastness of exploration, existential crises, and interplanetary war. But once we've gone there, we're going to need someone to uphold the law, protect and serve, and make sure no one is jaywalking on the hyperwalkways of the multiverse. Question. Addressing these and other concerns, the song Calling Occupants of Interstellar Craft reached the top 10 in the UK and Canada in 1977. What group first released this magnum opus in 1976? Lou Reed Russ.
Phil Collins and the Police.
Peter. The Sid Barrett Seppy.
I'm going to say everything's Ziggy Stardust.
And Ziggy Stardust is much closer, although I'm not even going to go into the history of Susudio. The answer was Klaatu, which should be familiar with every sci-fi fan, whether or not you knew it was also a group name. However, then it was covered in 1977 by the Carpenters, who made it momentarily famous in England and Canada. Issue number 2. The Netflix phenomenon from 2016 continued in fall of 2017 with the drop of the second season of Stranger Things, following the continuing adventures of a group of middle school misfits, adding new and compelling characters and widening the world beyond the closed borders of Hawkins, Indiana. Season 2 was loved by all who saw it. Or was it? Question. The original script had the story taking place in an entirely different part of the U.S., but the production had to be shifted because it would have been too difficult to film there in the wintertime. Where was the action supposed to have taken place? Ray Carroll Russ.
Miami.
Lucas Sinclair Seppy.
Buffalo.
Hard to record there in the wintertime, Russell. Seppy, you were so much closer. Answer was Montauk.
Oh, right.
Montauk was actually going to be the title of Stranger Things originally, and it would be happening in Long Island. It would have been very different.
Yeah.
Issue number 3. With the ever-speeding advancement of computers and the dawn of AI occurring with each breath we take, our lives continue to get easier and easier as more and more mundane tasks are taken off our hands by the machines of tomorrow, leaving us free to, hover over our phones and sink deeper and deeper into the mire of anti-social media. Maybe the end wouldn't be too bad after all. Question. Skynet was a computer system developed for the U.S. military by the defense company Cyberdyne Systems, designed by Miles Bennett Dyson and his team. What was the date Skynet originally went live? Kyle Reese Russ.
2012, right after the Dyson vacuum.
That's so timely. Dr. Silberman Seppy.
I'm sort of dumbstruck by his answer. It was right there at the front of mine. It's in End of the Line, so it's 1997.
It is.
But all the action happens in California, so maybe it's the end of the year. Let's say November 2nd.
Oh, that's so close, Seppy. So close. I would almost give you partial credit for that. It's August 4th, by the way. Judgment Day, August 4th, 1997. I would give you partial credit if it didn't mean the end of humanity as we know it, which makes you both wrong. Issue number 4. Philadelphia is the largest city in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the 6th most populous city in the United States. Philadelphia is the economic and cultural anchor of the Delaware Valley region, and just maybe the next home of the most important 4 days in gaming. Question. Philadelphia served as the temporary capital of the United States while the new capital was under construction in the District of Columbia from 1790 to 1800. Who were the presidents who, for a time, called Philadelphia home? Caesar Rodney Russ.
I feel like Jefferson's in there, and that's all I got.
Thomas Stone Seppy.
I'm going to go with Jefferson and one of the Adams because there's 2 of them.
Oh, I would have given you partial credit if you got the right Adams. Russ feels like he's kind of wrong. It's George Washington and John Adams. If you actually thought about it, they were building the Capitol. It hadn't been built yet. So we were at the very beginning. Anyway, that makes you both wrong, and I'm disappointed. And that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G.
Hello!
Oh,
Hello.
Hey, welcome to episode 226, Craig.
yeah, nothing. It's 226. It's like the first two don't add up to the third, and it's just 226. It's a big number.
The first two plus two. Anyway.
You back it up with a times 4, and it's just ridiculous.
It's
That's
ridiculous.
all I know.
Anyway, it is in fact episode 226 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakeland.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Seppy Yoon.
Hey,
Yes,
Seppy!
indeed!
Woohoo! Welcome back to the
Woohoo!
show, Seppy. We're happy to have you on here.
Seppy is one of the best D6G boosters out there.
He is very passionate, which I really
nothing
like.
but pause. I don't know what maybe there's a head injury in his past somewhere. I don't know.
Did you ever play football?
Maybe we
Seppy?
accidentally, maybe football. Maybe we accidentally transferred some money. I don't know.
Right.
There's a movie about this regarding Seppy.
Is there? Regarding Seppy. I thought it was Forrest Yoon. No?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Life's like a game box
Like
of
a
chocolates.
box of chocolates. I think there's a board game in there someplace, Seppy. That'll be your next one.
Oh my God, I've had a
Chocolates in
lot of bad game ideas this week, and we'll just put that on the pile.
Well,
The
not
worst,
to
of
be
course, was called Late to the Orgy. I was like, that's a terrible idea for a game.
Well, not to be confused with Chocolates in a Box. Seppy, of course, is the man behind Fight in a Box games. And we've had Seppy on in the past, and we're excited to have him here today because not only are we going to talk about what's up with Fight in a Box, what's been going on, how their latest launches have been going, and what the new hotness is coming, but also Seppy and I managed to get off to PAX Unplugged, the brand new, just finished, totally new idea, sort of, from our friends at Penny Arcade and PAX. And so we're going to spend some time chatting about that as well, our experiences, what it was like, what they're going for, did they achieve it, right?
Yeah, I was blown away.
I was impressed too, but save it for later. Don't spoil it.
I was going to say, let's talk about it later.
But up first, we do have a bit of business before we get to all that. First of all, of course, we managed to run into Seppy not that long ago, Craig, at the Dunkin' Donuts in the center of the universe, where all of us can meet.
Donuts at the center of the universe.
When we're not hanging out in Philadelphia and enjoying cheesesteaks, we meet at Dunkin' Donuts and enjoy donuts. And Seppy, do you remember what we talked about when we gathered in Dunkin' Donuts?
I was a little upside down that day. Can you? No, it was Stranger Things too.
There. We talked about, of course, Stranger Things, the upside down.
We did indeed at some length.
We did. It was a spoiler-filled season 2 discussion. So if you've already seen season 2, and you would just love to hear three nerds talk about how much they enjoyed it, what they thought about it, what they liked, what they didn't like, what we're looking forward to coming next. You might want to listen to that. And Craig, how do they go about listening to a Lost Chapter? What do they do?
Well, the best way to get Lost Chapter nowadays, Russ, is through Patreon. So you can either go to patreon.com and look for the D6 Generation, or you go to the D6Generation.com and find the Patreon link and click on that. It'll bring you directly to the D6 Generation Patreon page. Either way, you're going to get there eventually, and then you're going to see this video. Don't click on that. Don't watch it at all. Look around that site for a second. It'll tell you basically what's going on. And what's going on is you're going to help the show. You're going to kick in a little tip into the tip jar to help the show keep going, to help us get to where we need to get and talk to the people we need to talk to and keep this show rolling. And without you, folks who have already done it and folks who are hopefully thinking about doing it, there wouldn't be a D6 Generation today. So think about it, please, and we would super appreciate it. And we've got some cool ideas, I think, for the coming new year. Correct, Russ?
We're looking forward to that. So more about that.
We're looking forward to that more.
Future.
Exactly.
If this incentivizes anyone to listen to that episode, it has been years since I've had a full frontal rebuttal by anyone.
a full frontal rebuttal. And
I forgot about that.
I had forgotten about that. Wow.
I think my mind had just sort of
I had
glossed over the whole thing. Yeah.
I thought that might be wise. But what's the time now for, Craig?
Time for me to reach over here and say, Achievements in Gaming!
It is. And achievements, of course, brought to us by all of our fine patrons over at Patreon. So, Seppy, what have you been playing lately in terms of board games, RPGs, things like that?
Well, last time I was on the show, I was really disappointed with myself that I was not as omnivorous as you guys were, and that I had been spending way too much time in the game cobblery, where they just throw the raw tofu to try to keep me there instead of going.
I love it.
Yes, yeah, game cobblery. Games are created by walking around in them, so in that way they are like shoes. And just like fairy tales, you are like the dirtiest poor person possible if you are like a cobbler. Yeah,
that's the cobbler's son has no shoes? Does the game creator's children?
Now I want apple pie.
There's no apple pie in the game cobblery. There's none.
But cobbler, apple cobbler.
No cobbler for you.
Maybe you can have one of those McDonald's apple pies. Maybe that.
Those are moderately cobbler-like. If you mash them up in a bowl.
Oh my god,
those don't really. They don't really cut it.
No,
they're like a heat hazard more than anything else.
Flash burn.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then with that coffee that burns crotches, you could just like set yourself on fire. So I've been playing more games of a wider variety because the fuel for your brain to get things to click. We all agree that we are living in the platinum age of television now.
We are. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, TV is better now than it has ever been, ever. In the same way, we are living in the game renaissance. And you are getting exposed to more things and better things all the time. And to stay current, you need to play stuff. So, yeah. And get out of your rut. So I've been taking cues from you guys, and I've been listening to the beginning of your show to,
warm up. I see. You've been getting ready. You've been doing gaming calisthenics, as it were.
I have been. You got to check all those boxes so you get that nice little Xbox noise to happen.
Right.
So,
exactly.
For computer games, I've been playing a lot of XCOM 2 War of the Chosen.
Ooh, nice. What do you think of that? So I haven't played the latest expansion. What are you thinking about it?
All right. So did you ever do the Long War mod?
Yes. Yeah.
Long War mod's super fun, but War of the Chosen. So I had low expectations because I'm like, what could compare to the Long War mod? But War of the Chosen is so good. The only disappointment for me is that it doesn't carry its sort of new hotness, excitement all the way to the end. So it's like 80% of the game now is fighting with the Chosen, and then after you defeat them, you get to finish the game like normal.
Oh, I see. So it kind of loses its zoom at the end there.
It does, but it's filled with such great things like fighting space zombies. I did not know I wanted to headshot space zombies.
Everybody wants to headshot space zombies.
And headshotting space zombies is so good.
It is known, Khaleesi. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Right.
Absolutely. So that's probably the heaviest computer game lifting, and then of course there's some casual computer game stuff in there like Hearthstone, and then every once in a while to keep my brain from exploding, I'll play some Civ 5.
Right.
Because why not? I spent, years of my life honing my skills so I could beat it on Emperor mode. Why should I lose that skill now?
Right.
As far as board games go, I've gotten to play a lot of Atlas's new Curse Court because, those guys help me out. They distribute our games.
Yes, right.
And then they pity bring me to their conventions. and so Curse Court is amazing. Did you get a chance to play that at PAX?
I saw it played. I didn't get a chance to play it myself, but I like the look of it. What are you liking about it?
All right. It's nothing like gamers are used to. But I'm just going to let this quote speak for the whole experience, and people should go find this out for themselves. But at PAX Unplugged, the head of WizKids tweeted, "I have not bought a game in 3 years. When this comes out, I am buying this game."
There you go. Nice.
Unsolicited testimonial.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. In the game, we're all Game of Thrones fans, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're playing like one of those crappy little nobles that Cersei's is always trying to get to like her.
Right.
And she never does. You're playing one of those little nobles who are trying to guess what the major houses are doing.
Ah, cool.
And so it's a bidding deduction game. And so it's super minimal, plays in 3 years, 4 seasons each year. I would definitely check it out. There's a great tutorial video for it coming up. There's a teaser video already out for it. Yeah, it is bonkers fun. It is nothing like you've seen.
Cool. All right, now I want to play it, Seppy. I should have spent more time there. There were so many distractions.
I'm so sorry. I got caught up in stuff. Oh.
No, it's all good. There was so much to absorb. It's one of those things. But that sounds really great. It looked good.
Does look
cool.
There was
a lot of buzz for it, which is great.
So the other game that's I get to play, I've been getting to play a lot, is Alice's new Kickstarter's coming up for Cogs and Commissars.
Yeah.
It's a game of totalitarian propaganda where you're playing communist robots trying to get to be ahead of the party.
Yeah, like you do.
Makes sense to me.
Sure. Oh, it is. It's wildly fun, but it runs into one of those, new game design issues. Okay, and everybody needs to be on board with this. You have to make a game that's approachable, and so the first set of rules is like the teaching rules of the teaching game.
Yep.
So that you can get people into it, but then the full set of rules you lay, is like your second and third play.
Right.
Right. And so we've been trying to figure out where that line is and so forth and on. So there's been a lot of that. You should look for it. The art for it is fantastic. You get to play Bolsheviks, which are amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
And other individual agendas as you got to want to. So you get proletariats, bourgeois, and commissars. And you're trying to collect them in a very take that like classic Atlas sort of way.
Right.
So it's great.
Awesome.
So to make sure that I was well rounded, I've been trying to learn Drop Fleet from
look at you getting
Game.
a miniature game.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Well, you guys, remember, I met you at Capticon, which is a miniatures convention.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. To my fame, I won a 3rd place in a War Machine steamroller.
Yes.
And then I dropped the mic. I was never going to do any better than that.
Done. Check.
I got my plaque. I got my coins. Right. Obviously, Guild Ball's on the list for me too. Yeah. I love those guys, and that game. I love small unit tactics. Like Mordheim's my jam. Right. And Blood Bowl was my deal, and I'm like, the next game I promise to pick up is definitely going to be Guild Ball. I love those guys.
Cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Those guys are great.
Yeah.
Now does DMing count as gaming?
100%.
That's a lot of work. That's like the workhorse of gaming, dude. That's like the job to make other people's game amazing. That seems like, So yeah, totally. What have you been doing?
So now you got to let me know if this is gaming or not, because I write a super involved campaign. Okay. I set them up in books. So there's 3 to 5 adventures in a chapter, 3 to 5 chapters in a book. And then an entire adventure cycle will be 3 to 5 books. And each chapter will then have 3 to 5 sessions. So that's just sort of the formula it does. But I generally do about 2 hours of prep for 1 hour of play.
Yeah, it can be.
Wow,
it can be
that's some serious dedication.
Yeah.
So I'm starting. The new book has started. We finished the last book. And that's a lot of work. And so I'm starting the backfill and the aftermath of the last book, and all of that prep work
You're doing the prep work. That counts as gaming, though. Still,
does it count as gaming?
Yeah, it's like painting your models. Painting your models counts as gaming. It's
absolutely.
This is totally the same thing. You are preparing to dazzle others and share your universe with them. That totally counts, dude.
I went so deep once. Just because I had the characters participate in tax day when they were collecting it stuff, so that I went and made up an entire sort of medieval by tracts of land, how much you should be taxed by the pound, and how many copper pieces that ended up in meat of the chicken.
Wow,
that is hardcore, dude.
Right there. Yeah,
that is hardcore.
It's the worst. I'm the worst. Sometimes I just can't let things go. So I think did I miss a type of gaming?
No.
Oh, Pandemic. Pandemic Legacy. I'm playing season 1 over again, getting ready for season 2 because season 2 is really hard.
Wow.
Nice. So you got it all there right in the beginning, Seppy. That's impressive. So nicely done,
impressive.
sir. I like your list.
That's a lot. That's deep, some depth there.
So, Craig, what about yourself, sir?
Let's see. I played Company of Iron with Russ once.
Yeah, we'll define that as mostly played.
Yeah, I would say, like more than 50% played.
Yeah.
We played to the conclusion, but we didn't have any of the cool stuff, and Russ was working mainly by memory. And our track record when we have the book with us is not 100%, so God only knows. But it seemed neat. No, there were a couple things that I'm curious about to see on a second play, but our second play date fell apart. So then we played Rune Wars again. Mm-hmm. Still loving that game. That's still a great looking game. That was my first chance to get my new terrain to the table. So that was
awesome, dude. Yeah.
On Twitter, if you want to see that game and the terrain, and actually we used a lot more of it in the Company of Iron game. Yeah. So a lot of terrain there. A couple more games of Battles of Westeros, including we played a 4-player game where you can divide each side into 2 players. So it's not just teams, because you've got limited resources for each of you, and you can't really tell what the other person exactly what you can accomplish. So it was very cool. Played that with your brother and Joe and Pete when they came over. Also played Rail Raider Infinite 2 more times, which is intriguing because your brother was all for we could do that or Colt Express, which I explained last time was the games are very similar, although I would say Colt Express is a deeper game. But then Joe and Pete were both for Rail Raider Infinite to give that a try. Joe hadn't tried it the last time, and it was a deeper game with more. Once we played it out again, there was more strategy to it. There were more like how far up the train are you going to go, and so there's all kinds of cool stuff going there. So I think there's more there than I had initially saw. And then I got another game of Warhammer 40,000 in against the human mathematical probabilities deflector Dave from the Nerd Herders. Whenever I play him, the dice just do not behave in any way that you would expect mathematically for him or for myself. And I have a guy with 6 wounds, and he has a unit that shoots 18 shots. But if you do the math out, he should never do more than, on average, 2 wounds. Wiped my guy out in 1 round of shooting. So things like that just go across the entire game. And I was getting crushed right down till the very end. We were playing the objectives with the cards, which is my favorite way to play 40K now. And it came down to I had 2 models left. He wiped 1 out, consolidated in with his commander, happened to consolidate into a guy who hadn't fought in hand-to-hand yet. So that guy fought his commander who only had 1 point left. He failed that guy's armor save. He didn't have any more command points to reroll anything. And I happened to be sitting on a hand of cards that were all keyed to killing a character. So I jumped up 5 points in that one move and tied the game. So that was a lot of fun. And it just, again, took a long time. I think it might have been 2.5 hours maybe to play a 1,000 point game. But I have a whole bunch of new models. I love my death cards still. I love the way they play, and I really enjoyed it. What about you, Russ? You went to some convention also, I hear.
Yeah,
and
we'll
probably
talk more about the
played a game or 2
later, but I played quite a few games. So first of all, I've been playing a lot of Company of Iron. So I played 3 times. Once with Craig. My first game was actually at PAX East with Ray Greenlee, the gentleman who was on the show and also narrated Craig's book.
Yes.
Ray was a perfect gentleman, and it is not Ryan, it is Ray. Sorry for calling you Ryan and Ray. I did mess that up right there in the middle of the thing. But yeah, I really enjoyed Company of Iron at PAX. Had all the stuff there. Then when I played Craig, I forgot my 1 bag that had all the cards in it, so we had to fudge the card rules, and the cards really had a lot to the game. And then I played friend Tim Colonna last night, and again, we had a great time. I had all the components for that, and it was a really good battle. I really like Company of Iron. I like everything Privateer's done with it. It really, now I'm biased because I have a lot of War Machine stuff, and I like the core mechanics of War Machine. So I'm sure we'll review this in a future show once I played it with Craig a few more times, but really like it. Plays really fast. Tim and my game was done inside an hour. That was with teaching him the rules. You play with 20 points, so it's a few guys, maybe 10 guys on the table tops, maybe a few more if you go with cheaper dudes. And the card mechanics just really add a lot of depth. So I really like that. Also played Room Wars with Craig, as Craig mentioned. Also, while at PAX East, waiting in line for Acquisitions Inc., which is our new favorite live show at PAX, or PAX Unplugged, I should say. We played, my daughters and my wife and I played Camel Up, the iPhone version of Camel Up, just passing it around. That was fun. It could be a better app, but it does handle, you do play Camel Up while standing there waiting in line, so it's pretty cool. Also picked up a couple of games at PAX Unplugged. One was, I don't know if you saw this one, Seppy, Affectionate Cats and Cuddles. Have you seen that? So, my youngest daughter really wanted it because it had little wooden, cat meeples and little wooden hearts, and some fancy dice. But in the end, it was a complete luck game. Like there's no, and my kids don't like that. So we bought it because it was kind of cheap and cute, and we later played it, and we were not impressed in the end, and I think she regrets the purchase. But that was that. Then we also got, though, so really? I would not recommend, I don't often say on the show, don't get something, but I would just play the demo of Affectionate Cats and Cuddles before you buy it, that's what I'm saying. Also, Dead Man's Doubloons. This was so whenever I go to a convention, Seppy, I don't know if this happens to you, but I generally, due to the nature of our show and my passion for following games, I kind of know what games are coming out of the show.
I'm right there with you, Phil. I'm right there with you.
But what I wanted to do this time, but I was trying to find one game that I'd never heard of before from a small publisher. And so the one I saw this time was Dead Man's Doubloons, which had just come out from a Kickstarter. And Seppy, did you see this game? It was kind of near where you were hanging out.
I saw the booth.
Yeah, so the components are amazing because it was a pretty well-funded Kickstarter. Really cool. It's got little 4 different pirate ships. So basically there's an island in the middle of the table, and each player controls a pirate ship and a matching pirate captain who is running around on the island. And essentially you're locking in move cards that dictate how your ship will move and attack, but also optionally you can do X moves that allow you to move your captains around the island. And basically on the island, you're trying to be the first captain to get to the treasure to get some victory points, but while you're at sea, you're trying to sink the other ships. And one of the interesting mechanics is not only do the components look cool, and all the ships are different sculpts, as a Viking ship and a classic pirate ship and some others, but also there's an additional model for each ship that's translucent, because if a ship is sunk, you're not out of the game, your ship becomes a ghost ship. And then you can fight your way back into the game. And what's interesting is when the game ends, you score all kinds of victory points, but if your ship is a ghost ship, some of the victory points become negative. So really, your score is going to suck if you're undead at the end of the game.
Wow, those transparent ships look beautiful.
Right. Now, the components are awesome, and the artwork's fantastic. And the goal then is, and we all died at least once, the goal is near the end of the game, as you start killing each other, is to try to complete the thing you need to do to bring your ship back, which is basically collect enough gold to pay the ferryman or whatever it is to resurrect yourself. So, and then you can die again, so that you're trying to, cause the game end state to happen whilst not being dead at the end of it. And it's a really neat little game. The board is double-sided, and the other side is even more interesting, with a little more depth to it as well. It's a really great little game, and I can't wait to show it to you, Craig. I think you might like this one.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Dead Man's Doubloons. And finally, so Seppy, I wanted to share it. So being a passionate DM that you are, I'm glad you shared that story. So as long-time listeners know, I've been playing D&D with my niece and nephew and daughters and my brother, and we've been doing this campaign. And I tried this new crazy idea where a couple sessions ago I asked all the players, I said, roll. Now they're all level 8 and 9 now, and they just got to the end of Horde of the Dragon Queen, and now they're moving on to Rise of Tiamat. But I wanted to give the scale of a bigger thing happening. So I asked all the players, each person roll up a level 5 character, do whatever you want, but they have to be someone who'd be loyal to the Harper's Guild, be a member of the Harper's Guild. So they all come back with these characters. And then what I did last episode was they were going to investigate something with their primary characters. And they got into this room and they saw all these frozen people. And the frozen people were all the alternates they'd made up. And then I did a flashback. And I'm now running their alternates in a flashback sequence through one of the dungeons from Tales of the Yawning Portal, one of the classic dungeons in there, to do the backstory, and they're going to actually see how some of the events that are now taking place, things that weren't really explained in Horde of the Dragon Queen that just happened, off camera, I'm now doing a flashback to show them what happened there. And
I love that.
The hope
I
is
love that.
So the hope is instead of telling them backstory, they're playing backstory. But also the hope is to give them a feeling like this whole Horde of the Dragon thing and the Cult of the Dragon taking over the world and dragons coming back and all that and Tiamat being returning is a larger scale than just what their mains are doing, right? And what's interesting, now the challenge here, Seppy, is they know the end of the scene because they know somehow the characters, the level 5 characters they're playing now, somehow all end up frozen, right? So at one point the one's like, what if we die? If I die now, could I still be frozen? Right? Like it's almost like when you're watching the flashback in an episode where something scary is happening. You're like, well, the main can't really. I mean, the character I'm watching can't really die because, And I'm like, well, you could die. I'll just, you could. Maybe they froze you anyway. So I don't know. We'll figure that part out. But so far it's been really pretty cool, and they seem to be enjoying it. The only thing is, I can tell the dungeon I'm running them through might be a little bit big, and they're kind of itching to get back to their main character. So I may have chosen one that was a little bit long, but they seem to, near the end of the dungeon now, I'm starting to sprinkle in some of the characters. So what's kind of happened is they're going through one side of the dungeon. Meanwhile, the cult's on the other side trying to get this artifact that plays a major role in the second half of the main story. So, the characters have just gotten through the half of the dungeon, now they're seeing the cult, and now they're getting excited again because they realize the main story. And they're seeing characters that their other characters have met. They're like, oh my god, it's that person! So it's kind of starting to work. So it's interesting. We'll see how it goes, but I've never tried anything like this before, and it's kind of crazy.
I think that's super ambitious. It's the perfect example of show don't tell. Right. The problem with deep DMing is number one, 70% of the stuff that you write is just going to be ignored by the players.
Right.
And number two, if they do deep dive on something, some of these expositions could be so long, they're not going to retain it. I mean, I have ridiculous handouts of stuff that the players have done, let alone stuff that's been said to the players. They can't even remember the things they've done on their own. So this device to give them a way to explore the background of a deep story, I think that's awesome. Tell me how I really want to hear how it ends up.
I'll keep updating it, but one of the things I'm able to do is because, these two adventures, Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat, are both well-known D&D adventures now, and all the artwork for all the main characters in there is online. You can copy and everything. So when I play, I have a computer, I have a TV screen behind me as the DM, and I have it as my second screen on my computer. So what I'm able to do using Realmworks, I can project behind me the images of the monsters they're fighting. So I'll go online and when they're fighting a bugbear or something, there'll be a picture of a bugbear behind me, and if they're in a jungle, there'll be a picture of a jungle to kind of set the mood. But the major characters from the main story, I have all their images, right? So what I'm able to do is you walk into a room and you see this person, and it's like watching a flashback in a TV show, and you realize that's the same actor, that must be the same character that we saw 3 scenes ago. And they're like, oh my god, it's Talus the White, she's there. She's here in the middle of a jungle. What the hell is she doing here? What's happening? So it's kind of cool because even though it's their alternates, they're like, oh my god, this is part of the story again. So it's kind of working, but we'll see. We'll figure it out.
Here's a couple of things that I do to take that to the next level.
Yeah.
I set up a second room in the house unbeknown to the players. So I'm like, hey, let's take a break. I need you guys to come over here. And then they'll go to the other room. They'll be surprised that it's set up. And then have them come back to the primary, where all the nice terrain and other thing is set up. And then there will be another human body, another player who's a guest star from a previous something,
that's awesome.
Who just jumps right into the scene with them as an alternate. And it instead of me having to do all the voices and then all the characters, I let this person have limited knowledge to the story, and then they are this living character in the story. Other things that I do, I tend to make props. I actually made a puzzle box because it was such an important prop. I gave them that, and then how they interacted with it, and the things they actually did. So
that's awesome.
Cool.
That's really cool. I think all that counts as gaming because it's
theater.
And now I could never do what you do. I like to lean on, like, I try to use my creativity for the weird things like the flashback, but I lean on pre-made dungeons and pre-made main campaigns because, like, I don't have, like, we played, because of Thanksgiving and everything, we played, like, the kids all slept over and we played from 6 till midnight the first night, and then the next day we played another 5 hours, right? If I had to work 2 hours for every hour of game time, that would have been, like, I don't even know how many hours of work. So, but by having a pre-made dungeon, if they decide to skip half of it, that's no skin on my nose.
It's awesome. I mean, I can't tell you how much love I still have for the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The classics. And that's what's great about it. If you haven't tried Tales of the Yawning Portal, like, all the classics, like the one they're running through now, The Hidden Temple, that was originally written in 1980. And so it's been kind of funny because the kids are like, oh, look, it's a pit trap. I'm like, no, there was one part where they're going on the stairs and the boulder comes out behind them and starts rolling. And they're like, oh, look, it's Indiana Jones. I said, yeah, but just so you know, this dungeon was actually made before Indiana Jones came out. Like, what? So, like, it's kind of cool to see that. And, like, Tomb of Horrors is in there, too. So these have all been redone for 5e. So if you want to run someone through Tomb of Horrors, which, by the way, with Ready Player One coming out, you probably should. Just a little fun thing to do. It's in there. So, like, it's a really cool, I would really highly recommend. If you're looking for some crazy, White Plume Mountain, also in there, like some super classics are in there. So check it out. Tales of the Yawning Portal is definitely worth picking up if you want some crazy, challenging dungeons, too, for your...
There's absolutely nothing wrong with stuff that's, ready to go. If people are invested in their character, they're going to bring their own story and their own twist to it, which is awesome.
Yeah, we've been having fun. Plus, playing with young players, they never seen any of this stuff before, so it's all new to them. Right. So anyway, so that's my stuff there. What about so Seppy? You kind of hit every category up front, which is I love the ambition. Craig, what have you been doing for modeling lately?
For modeling, my modeling has been odd because I haven't done any painting in a very long time. I don't know what's going on with my head. It feels sort of broken, and I'm not going to lie. So I've set aside my Rune Wars Decon, the Decon army that I had assembled, which is very large, and then I set it aside. I then assembled over 200 15mm models for the Battles of Westeros game. And I did eventually, thanks to I made my last purchase on Black Friday. I now own everything that they ever made for Battles of Westeros, including the Baratheon expansion and Brotherhood Without Banners, and all of it is now assembled. And I haven't primed it or anything. That's a lot of models, but I assembled them. And then, speaking of Black Friday, I knew there was one Black Friday sale in a game store locally that was 20% off board games, and I knew I could get my last Battles of Westeros expansion there on that. And on my way there, I got an email from a friend who said, "Oh, by the way, Midgard, which is another local game store where we play most of our games lately, is having a great make your own Black Friday sale." And I went over there after I got the Brotherhood Without Banners, and I went in, and the sale went like this. If you buy one thing, it's 30% off. If you buy two things, it's 50% off one of them. If you buy more than two things, it's 20% off the whole thing. But if you kind of like went wacky and there was a better way of one of those three deals to save you more money, they would work with you, whatever that. I ended up going, and I'm like, well, I want like a Death Guard unit so I can make the hand guys. Oh my God, but wait, that's just 30% off. That's great. Oh, but wait, what if I get the Terminators? Oh, look at this new terrain. So I ended up with a Biologist Putrefier, which is an awesome character. 7 Plague Marines with close combat weapons, 5 Blight Lord Terminators, 3 Death Shroud Terminators, the Plasma Conduits terrain, and the Thermic Plasma Regulator terrain. And I have since Friday, so that's less than like 5 or 6 days, I have put all of that together and primed it all with the Zenithal priming, so that makes it look like it's almost been painted already. So that's cool. Although I will say these new kits that Games Workshop is putting out, the final outcome of them is beautiful, but there's so little chance to customize compared to the old kits. It's very fitted. It's like sort of like, for instance, the Plague Marines, each model has 2 options. And to go beyond those 2 options, you can do it because it's plastic and you can, cut pieces and make them and shift them and put different arms on guys if you want to make little changes and stuff. But for the most part, it's not like tack on all kinds of cool pieces and make all kinds of different poses. The poses are pretty much chosen for you already. So I was a little sad about that. Although, again, like I said, the outcome is beautiful, and I don't want any more. I've got plenty, and I did a bunch of cutting up of one of the Imperial or Dark Imperium boxes of my Plague Marines. So that was me, Ross. What about you?
Not much, unfortunately. Between traveling to PAX Unplugged and everything, I've not got a lot of painting in. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that. Hopefully this weekend, actually. That's my plan.
I thought somebody had a dry brush.
Nice.
Ooh, that's
Excellent.
important.
Does that count as gaming? Is that
Yes,
gaming?
it's kind of
We'll
modeling.
give you that for modeling.
It's kind of like DMing. Yeah, you're enabling others to have fun, so that's a win.
We
Did you get any painting in yourself, Seppy? You mentioned you played some miniature games. Have you done any painting?
Does commissioning other people to paint your stuff count?
No, sorry, no.
No.
That I have to deny, unfortunately.
All right, yeah, no, yes, that's
What about
painting heaven.
What about other geeky stuff like books, comics, TV shows, movies? What have you been doing on that front, Seppy?
Oh my God, Dirk Gently.
Right.
I'm a fan.
This season's been crazy. I mean, I every time I think it's a little over the top too much, I like it. So, because it's been really over the top this season with the whole scissors wielding swords guys and their bucket heads.
It's super out there, and I didn't think I was gonna like how out there it was. I'm really glad the first season was really grounded in like a reality that normal people could follow.
Right.
Because it really lifts this season. You're on board because they don't have to explain the mechanics.
Right.
And you're on board for the adventure, and you're there for the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. I liked Future Man a lot, but it's filled with sophomore humor.
Right.
Are we going to talk about Future Man, Russ?
Sure, you can talk about Future Man. I did not enjoy Future Man, but I maybe need to watch more. Sell me on Future Man.
I'm not going to sell you on it. If Seth Rogen at his most sophomoric is not your thing, and throwing a whole geek layer on top of it doesn't attract you, then you should just steer clear. Okay. But if the idea of Seth Rogen being sophomoric in a very post-apocalyptic, time travel-y Terminator sense is for you, then this show is for you.
I feel like it's just been done too much.
Well, it
doesn't feel original to me. That's my problem.
It isn't. The fact is, it is a show like Strange Things, right. That is as a montage of other people's ideas, all incorporated in the same thing.
Yeah, but somehow for me, like Orville, there's nothing original in Orville. Like Orville is like Star Trek original series, just redone.
I would say there's all kind. I would say the way that they're modernizing all the different things is actually.
What I mean is, but it feels good. Like they managed to do what I feel like Future Man is trying to do, but not succeeding at. So in other words, Orville takes some of those original plots and the original premises, and then puts the twists on it that makes it interesting to me. And for some reason, Future Man doesn't. Like it doesn't feel like Orville feels original, even though it's redoing some old tropes in new ways. Whereas a Future Man just felt like, I don't know what I'm missing. I don't know what it's missing for. I can't describe it. I don't know.
So what you're saying is the whole joke in the beginning where it's the last Starfighter is too real.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know. What do you think?
Trying to make fun of it.
Do you like it?
I haven't seen it.
All right.
I mean, I thought it looked. I can't watch any TV. I don't have any chance to watch any of my own shows. Well, much.
Okay. What else are you watching, Sepp? Well, go ahead. So
I really you touched on Orville, and this idea of as long as we update it and make it our own, it is original enough. Techno happened in my lifetime, right? And there was a long time argument: is sampling and DJing an art form? Right? Is it legitimate music?
Right.
now everybody's like EDM is its own thing. Yes, this is just part of it, the way it expresses. In this way, these shows that are like cutting and pasting, in our time in Dunkin' Donuts, we talked about all the pieces, parts that make up this season of Stranger Things.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And sometimes it's successful for an individual, and sometimes it's not. The real star for Future Man isn't Josh from Hunger Games. It really is the side character who plays the Reese type character, and the journey that he goes on. And Ed Begley Jr. does a great job. So these are things that end up happening in it. But I mean, the awesome thing about living in the platinum age of television is you can find more and more stuff that it might just be to you as a specific audience.
Right.
And that might have happened with Future Man for me because, I love all things post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, well, that's a given. Right.
And I love everything that's referential.
Right.
And so.
Well, it's definitely got that. No argument there.
Right.
And I like that kind of thing. Like, I can't wait. I loved Ready Player One, the book, and I really can't wait for the movie. I'm really anticipating that I hope they do it justice. But the book is exactly both those things, right? It's post-apocalyptic, 80s references all the way. So.
Right. And, speaking of movies and anticipation, did you guys see that the Infinity Wars Marvel trailer for Avengers?
I watched it. I watched it with my class today.
I'm avoiding watching these things. See, I've decided that Thor, I loved the Thor movie, but I decided the trailer ruined some key elements of it. Now, I don't know how. Well, the Hulk scene in Thor, which is not a spoiler because it's been in every trailer, the Hulk scene in Thor would have been so much more powerful if you did not know it was coming, right? So, like,
that's true.
And that's just I don't know how they allowed the marketing guys to ruin that scene, but they did. I'm now on a thing where I don't need to watch a trailer to know I'm going to want to see Infinity War. I know I'm going to see it. So if I'm movie,
that's true.
I'm going to see like Star Wars, Infinity War, whatever. I'm just going to boycott all trailers. I don't need to be marketed to. I know I'm going to go see it. You got my money. I'm just going to go to the theater and watch it, and I'm going to try to avoid all the trailers I can.
That makes perfect sense. But I will say that I just found the trailer so exciting and cool that I enjoyed that experience for itself.
I've got questions for you, Craig.
Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to be it's willpower, people.
No,
willpower.
It's okay. It's okay, Russ.
I like cookies. I just can't eat them all day, right?
Okay.
Oh, just because I like chocolate cake doesn't mean I eat it every day.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a quote from one of my favorite DJs of all time. Craig, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Thanos. They really, when I looked at the trailer, I was surprised how much they made, how much more human they made him.
Yeah, he's been slowly becoming more and more human, I think, or at least all of a sudden he became human. Right,
because you look at the comic book reference for him and the earlier Marvel reference for him, and he's like. His purpleness is barely contained by his gold armor and helmet.
Right, yeah.
Right? He is practically like purple power hulky kind of proportions.
Yep.
And they rolled it way back and they're like, we want you to feel like this is a real person, a real alien. And that was my biggest surprise.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Well, I don't know anything about the comics, so I was fine with it. I just loved I thought, and I don't want to spoil anything for Russ, just the lines were awesome. I thought the crafting of it was awesome, and I don't think it showed you anything that we didn't already know. It just showed you in cool ways, like Peter Parker's hair going, like arm hair sticking up on end was just an amazing little moment. And so little moments like that I thought were really cool. And I agree 100% with why Thanos is all of a sudden a little more human. And I think that makes sense. That's one of those things, I think, where when you're making a comic book into a movie, you have to understand that a successful comic book caters to maybe 40, maybe 80,000 people. And a successful movie has to cater to millions. And those millions are among those millions, if you're lucky, there are going to be many, many millions, and among those millions are going to be people who lack that kind of imagination where they can suspend their disbelief when there's like a big giant purple guy running around. And so
that's true. No, that's true. But speaking to that as well, did you guys see the Justice League movie?
Yes.
I wanted to ask you guys. I saw Justice League. So what'd you guys think?
It was completely absent of Asian people, almost.
Didn't really notice that.
That
but now
is
that you
true.
mention it, sure.
I'm like, even like South Asian and East Asian people. I'm like seriously? I mean, that's like billions of people, and this is like a world crisis. We didn't, and it's an audience, right? How do people want to see themselves in this story? Just like you're talking about humanizing Thanos, Marvel does a much better job of like putting the story in Asia. We're gonna have a Korean doctor working on the Vision, right? Yep. It's like we're part of this world. We're part of this world-ending event. Obviously, Doctor Strange did a weird thing with that. But if you talk about Thor, Valkyrie suddenly became this like a great success.
Yeah.
In the comic book, she's very different than she was in the movie, and they make these constant choices. But in Justice League, they decided to make none of those choices.
That is true.
And it saddened me.
So, did you guys? I mean, other than the poor choice for diversity, was it a good? Did you like the plot and the way they handled the heroes?
Craig?
You're gonna make me go first?
I can go first.
No, I got it. I did not dislike it, and I went in expecting that I would. I went in with this thought: I have to go see this so that I can speak to it. I went into it with much the same way I went into reading Twilight, which was the first big sacrifice I ever made for the podcast, and and that one totally lived up to my low expectations. However, I was very happily surprised and impressed and enjoyed. What are we talking about?
Justice League?
Justice League, yeah, thank you. It was.
What are you talking about? That's really the question.
Yeah, no, it's. It was. I think there were a lot of lost opportunities.
Yeah.
I think that. And you could tell that it's a little rough. It was a little rough around the edges. I thought the CGI was wildly uneven.
Yeah. Like
there were some amazing moments, and I thought the team that was in charge of Cyborg should honestly have been replaced. Although, as the story progresses, I was like, okay, so that's kind of why they went in that direction. But I think that it was I think it was a poor choice in the end to try to make him the way they made him, so that it was less grounded in reality. And this is the third movie I've seen the blue people from Avatar's face show up. And this time it was Steppenwolf. So you had an entire alien race that had their facial features and the CGI that worked exactly the same way with the whole Uncanny Valley problem I had with Avatar. You had them with Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets. And in Justice League, you had Steppenwolf, which I thought was a shame. I don't think he needed to be CGI, really. Yeah. And so the fact that he was, not only was he CGI, but he was CGI that used an engine that I know nothing about any of this. Of course, listeners know I'm an idiot when it comes to tech of any kind. But there's something that is eerily similar between the blue people whose name the Navi.
Yeah. I see you, Craig. I see you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man.
Well played.
Yeah, so I thought that was unfortunate. But I thought, you could easily tell, I thought, the Joss Whedon fingerprints were all over several scenes that I thought were great. I found it very entertaining. I thought it was it had a nice comic book movie arc to it. There were parts, I don't want to do any spoilers. There were parts I was like, okay, which, you can get away with some of that in a comic book movie. And I will say I walked away for the first time thinking maybe I'll look into the DC miniatures game that Night Models kept in favor of the a Marvel miniatures game that I loved because it's the same game engine but different it's all the DC characters, and I've never really been drawn to the DC characters, so I think that's a pretty telling takeaway right there. I think other than Wonder Woman, this was easily my favorite DC movie in a generation, I would say. So that was my thoughts, gentlemen.
Yeah, no. There's a lot I agree with. I went with very low expectations for that movie. I mean, I had looked at a couple of reviews and so forth and whatnot, and the trailers. Speaking to Russ's earlier point, I was like, oh, they spoil any kind of moments that I was going to have with the movie, but they actually were a disservice. I found the performance of the Flash, because I like the Flash on the TV show. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I like his career from Glee and all over. I mean, I like him. And I'm like, how can they do? But I actually found myself liking the Flash in the movie. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. From the trailers, I thought I was going to dislike the way they handled Flash in the movie, and I actually enjoyed very much how they handled him.
Yeah, I mean, they took all their cues from Quicksilver from I mean, they just added lightning. Right. But still, I was okay with that. Wonder Woman, her presence on the screen, just great. I love Jason Momoa. And, I'm really I found myself done with three things, though.
I know where you're going.
Origin stories.
Yes.
Batman stories that aren't really centered on Batman's psychosis. Yeah. The fact is, if they really wanted to make Ben Affleck's Batman real or unique, they would focus on the dossiers, like, when he's fighting the White Martian army, that, you took over all the Justice League people. You know why that's fine? Because I've already planned on how to take all those people out.
Right.
Because Batman isn't just money.
My brother, that's my biggest problem. So Batman is one of my. I'm more of a Marvel guy, but one of my few ultimate favorite DC heroes is Batman, and I'm done with Ben Affleck's Batman, and it's not Ben Affleck. I get that he wants to play the role well, and he likes Batman, and he wants to be a good Batman, and I appreciate all that. But the problem is the way they're writing him, like the whole line, "What's your superpower? I'm rich." Like, that's not Batman's superpower. It's not that he's wealthy. His wealth isn't really a big deal, actually. The thing is he is obsessive with, he's like, when you play chess with Batman, he's already beaten you now and 3 games from now, and he's actually now plotting how he's going to beat you in, Go. Like, he's always 16 moves ahead, to your point about, and he doesn't come across that way in these movies. He doesn't.
Yes, and it dehumanizes him. They had a lot of moments to talk about how he can't connect with the team and why he doesn't make a good leader. Right. And they could actually make an argument in an American Psycho way, like an Asperger's spectrum Batman. It would be a great way to modernize him. And Ben Affleck has already played that character in The Accountant.
Yeah, they should do like a Beautiful Mind sort of thing. Like, he's just like so freaking out there, but they don't. And he doesn't. And if you think about Justice League, like, Batman really had no good scenes. Like, what did he really do? Like, he doesn't, like, it's not, except for being kind of broody the whole time. I mean,
Right, and I don't need him driving around and stuff. I don't.
Yeah, it's not his gizmos. That's not.
I would rather see Talladega Nights, like Ricky Bobby, if I want to see people drive around and things. That's not really my deal. Yeah. I want to see, like, characters having to step outside of themselves. And in this way, the Marvel movies do this better with Black Widow and Hawkeye,
right?
Who realize that they're way out of their depth. They are just
they're not in the same league, right?
If they save a couple of civilians, that's their job. If they stop a couple of grunts from getting a couple of civilians, even better. But they know that they're taxed even fighting like the lowest denominator people.
Right.
And there's sort of a nod to that with Batman and vehicles, but honestly, if you're going to do a Batman like this, you have to bring something new to the story. So again, the origin stories is not for me. Like a Batman who doesn't actually dive into the interesting parts of Batman. Just like, when they reinvented Doctor Who,
Right.
With the latest incarnations, it's all been about the Doctor's internal journey and how lonely it is to be a Time Lord.
Right.
How do you interact? You need this interaction, but how do you get it if you're somebody out of time? Just like that same lens. They try to do it with Superman, and I've never been a Superman guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But still, somebody who had all the advantages like wealth and status and attractiveness, how that person is still isolated from society. That's an interesting Batman story.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I was with you guys. In the end, it was, it didn't suck. I'm excited.
Right.
That's kind of where I was. I wouldn't say it was an amazing film, but it was fun. It was a fun ride. The whole family actually enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Well, that's a lot of achievements. I think the only thing I want to add is, Seppy, if you've not been watching Stan vs. Evil, I highly, highly, highly recommend it.
Is it as good as Ash vs. the Evil Dead?
It is. Okay. It's evil. Mm-hmm. It's Evil Dead. It's very Evil Deadish. Kind of meets I don't even know what it meets. I had an analogy once and I forgot what I used, but it's kind of like. It's kind of like a modern. It's a bit Evil Dead-y without quite the level of gore. It does have the campy effects. And the main character, Craig, what's the actor's name? He was the doctor of Scrubs.
He was the main doctor, the main old doctor, and the main doctor, old, but the main
the teaching doctor, the main teaching doctor in Scrubs. Yeah. He was who has just a great in this role, and he's this grumpy old cop who has been cursed through time, and so all these different witches and demons are chasing him. And very much like Ash in Evil Dead, he's just basically takes no crap from them and just kills them and views it as oh, here we go again. It's very much that scene. It's not, All
right, I'm on board. I also liked the spoof of those. Did you ever see Dale and Tucker versus Evil?
No.
It's a Netflix movie. I would recommend it. It's it's good. It's a spoof on that specific spoof.
All right. Well,
has anybody?
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, has anybody checked out The Punisher?
Yes. Oh my God, Punisher,
mm-hmm.
Best. I mean, now, this is I've actually enjoyed most of the Netflix Marvel efforts.
Yeah. Okay.
Punisher is the best by
wow.
by a lot.
Okay.
And I like Daredevil and I love Jessica Jones. This exceeds them in ways. The ways you will emote watching this show will blow your mind.
Uh-huh.
Really good.
Craig, you know how the other shows drop a few episodes in the season?
Yep.
Punisher doesn't drop a single episode. It is really good.
No,
okay.
It is,
I'm
Punisher is off the charts.
3 episodes in, and I'm just it's almost too much.
Oh,
so it's. I mean, I would say it's doing everything it set out to do, and maybe it's just not a good time in my life for that kind of intensity.
Maybe. It's not a happy show.
No.
But neither was Jessica Jones, right? I mean,
not necessarily. No, that was
that
was a little more. This is much more real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I described this to someone. It's hey, what do you do with veterans from the Middle East wars in a world that has superheroes?
Right.
And people look at me blankly, and I go, it's still terrible for them, and then we're going to go through that pain. I mean, Punisher really says, if you have these wars and you have Americans going to these wars, it doesn't matter if you have superheroes. These problems are real, and they're taking you through them.
Yeah.
It's really. It works on so many levels. I really am enjoying it.
I would see it. I would say it's probably the most genuine, actual, story arc, and maybe that's why. I don't think it's not bad. I don't dislike it. It's just very intense.
The other ones are escapist. You can escape into a world where David Tennant, though it's dark, it's escape to see a world where David Tennant gets to tell people what to do, and they do it, right? Jessica Jones, super dark. But when you have, real world situations about people who went to war, who were born just around 9/11, there's no escapism in Punisher, and it try to uses that to corner you to face some of these things. And that's what makes it good. But it also doesn't make it always fun.
Right.
That's not a fun show.
That might be what it is.
It's not a fun show. Although I think they do a good job with providing some, I wouldn't call it comic relief, but levity. There's levity in there between his relationship with his, I don't want to spoil anything, but he does build some, although you never really know the level of trust going on. But when he does work with people and at least have some level of trust with them, there are some pretty humorous, like, moments that kind of bring some levity to the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's the Marvel people are learning.
Yeah,
you can't have a monolithic character who's only in his own head. You can't maintain that for 13 episodes and make it interesting.
Right. Yep. I was worried after the first episode that it might be too much that, but as it's gone on, I've really enjoyed it. I'm in episode, I think, 6 or 7 now. No, 8. I'm over halfway done.
Oh, it gets super intense.
Yeah, there's so many scenes I want to talk to you about, Seppy, that I can't because it'll spoil for the people. There are moments it's like, oh my god, I can't believe. Oh my god.
For those people, yes. Let's stop there.
All right, well that must be achievements because man, this has been a big one. But so many things to talk about. It's been a good month or so for nerds. You got to.
Yeah, well, you guys went to a big con too. That's big.
Well, that's up later.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakelin? I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap...
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey, and welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around, I want to talk about, I'm a little embarrassed to talk about this game, honestly. My daughters have gotten me into it, so I figure if they like it and they're passionate about it, then someone else might be too. I'm playing it now because they are encouraging me to fiddle around with it, and that, of course, is Animal Crossing for iOS. So this, of course, is based on the game Animal Crossing from... our friends over at Nintendo, originally on the Nintendo DS. And so more and more Nintendo games are starting to show up. I guess given the success of Pokemon Go, I've always kind of thought that if Nintendo would just put games on the phone platforms, they would do extremely well. And so apparently someone over there is thinking the same thing because now Animal Crossing is over here also. Now, I tease my girls because I don't really know why it's named Animal Crossing, other than the fact that there are anthropomorphized animals everywhere. They don't seem to be crossing anything. They're not crossing roads or bridges or anything. But in this game, you're basically trying to set up a campsite. You, the player, are the only person who looks like a human. Everything else is some sort of animal, humanoid creature. And you basically walk around from place to place, fulfilling essentially pick up and deliver missions, which then those people give you other crafting supplies. And the whole goal of the game, as far as I can tell, is to craft various pieces of furniture to populate your campsite. And then you can share your well-populated campsite with other players of Animal Crossing. And essentially is a home decorating game if your home were a campsite in the middle of the wilderness. The game is as exciting as it sounds. But I find myself strangely enjoying it. It's very cathartic. It's kind of mellow. There's no pressure. You just jump on there, you do a few missions, you leave. I think I'm enjoying it mostly because I'm interacting with my daughters while I'm not with them. So I'll visit their camp, drop off some supplies for them. I'll buy some things off of them, things like that. So it's more of a sort of, but they seem to be loving it, and they don't normally like these kind of games, so I'm not really sure what is appealing about it, but it seems to have that special mojo that so many Nintendo games somehow manage to muster. So if you're an Animal Crossing fan on the DS, you definitely want to check this out, and that is Animal Crossing on iOS.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep, a segment in which...
Hey, less of that. More just getting on with the show.
Seriously, Wakelin, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, Hey, welcome back, everybody. So as you know, you've already heard Seppy talk, so there's no surprise there. But you've got Seppy, right? You've got the mastermind behind not only squirrels living and dying by the skin of their teeth, you've got humanity itself bowing down before any number of cataclysmic, apocalyptic visions of destruction. So we've got to talk a little bit about Seppy and catch up. I mean, whence do you get between squirrels and the end of the world? What's going on next, Seppy?
I had this thing that happened to me this last quarter. I'm like trying to do things in a different way. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result.
Right.
Yep.
So I've taken on, normally I'm a guy who like consumes themselves with one project at a time.
Yeah.
And then that's all I'm doing. I'm just sort of, you know, under the table in my own bomb shelter, making whatever is happening. You know, people are throwing raw tofu at me to try to keep me filled with sustenance as I try to cobble the games away. But now this time I'm take a step back, and running a small business is a lot of wearing many hats. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the things that this year has really been for us is me pushing the business end forward. But in this last quarter, I'm like, I'm going to get back to everything that I love. I'm going to make some games. I'm going to make a lot of games.
That sounds good.
So right now I got a few different creative projects going on where normally I would just be sort of chasing one down the rabbit hole until I got lost somewhere undescribable. But so we made the reprint of Squirrel or Die happen. Local artist Graham Judd, who's fantastic. He did his other claim to fame is he did a book which is a botanist's guide to the Lord of the Rings with his dad, who's a professor of botany from like UFC or some Florida university of importance. And they basically the entire Fellowship of the Rings takes you to, you know, somewhere in rural England all the way to somewhere around Baghdad from a botanist perspective.
Yeah? Oh, wow.
Yeah, this
cool.
If you didn't know this, that's what happened. And he and his dad just they did this book. It's out. It's out. You can get it on Amazon. It's fantastic. And his art style is just so very different. You guys have seen the new Squirrel Die, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was great.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, I really want to do something with you. We need to make a lower price point Squirrel or Die. Let's make that happen. And it's been really well received. We're really excited about it. We pre-sold 1,100 Squirrel or Dies with the new version. And to date, with the deluxe version, that's what we're calling the wood tile version now. We sold 1,200 of those guys. Nice. So the business end went really well.
Let me ask you this, because I noticed on the new Squirrel or Die you have different artwork on some of the boxes. So like not all the boxes have the same art, right?
Yeah,
so like, it's like you want to collect all three sort of situation. What was the thinking behind doing different art on the same game, just different art on some of the boxes?
The art's great, or at least I think so, or at least Bob and I think so. And we wanted to show off a lot of sort of a little bit more depth. It's a tiny box, right? It's a $10 game. So to be able to show more art, we thought this would be a great way to showcase what's going on. I mean, you've seen the 3 different covers. It's really clear that squirrel is not long for this world.
He's not going to live. He's definitely in the or die category.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. So that's why we did. And, you know, as you know, Pandemic Legacy is a thing. They had a white box and a blue box.
Right.
And now people are like less resistant to the idea of packaging that it in of itself is cool for some reason or another.
Right. So this is like the Squirrel or Die version of Pandemic Legacy is what you're saying.
Oh my God, yeah. That's exactly. If you like Pandemic Legacy, you might not like Squirrel or Die at all. But but if you like the idea of multiple covers for your collectible game, then yeah, that's definitely.
If you're the kind of person who thinks board games with different kinds of colors might be something you're curious about, Squirrel or Die is for you. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Any association with pandemic, legacy, quality game.
Purely
I want-
coincidental.
Yes. Any association is purely coincidental, but you might like Squirrel or Die. Right. Exactly.
I just want to be hanging out in the room with those people, you know?
Right.
I'll be in the back jumping up and down. Look at me, look at me.
Right. So
Yeah.
when you next buy your Pandemic Legacy Season 2, you should think, you know who else does this? Squirrel or Die. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. I'm very excited about season 2. Have you guys started your season 2s yet?
I have
Pandemic
not,
Legacy?
but it is sitting here staring at me. It's like
Yeah.
it's like leering at me from the corner. Yes.
Yeah, well, we talked about that before earlier in the show, but we won't go back to that. But
Right.
Business End for Fight in a Box,
Yeah.
doing very well.
Good.
The odyssey of distribution, we can talk about that. End of the line. Thanks to your fans and everybody who helped out with the Kickstarter, we got that done 3 months early.
Yeah,
Yay!
that's exciting.
Nice. That's very rare among Kickstarters.
And you guys didn't tell me. You should have told me. You're like, hey, Seppy, what are you going to do after you have all these games after the Kickstarter? No.
Yeah, we don't actually provide any practical or useful advice for Kickstarter.
No.
Just a place for you to live or die by the Kickstarter curse, really.
Right.
Yeah, really. I felt as though I deserved a little more advice after I helped you break the Kickstarter curse.
That's true.
You know, I had this entire garage filled with games, End of the Line specifically, and I was like, so we sent these all out to the backers. We did that on Thanksgiving. Bob and I were packing boxes on Thanksgiving to make sure that everybody could have them for Christmas. But then afterwards, we're at the beginning of this year, and we're like, hey, you know, what are we going to do? And so, you know, there are cons that we go to and that we really love. Captain Con was a great way for us to start our year with selling the End of the Lines and so forth and whatnot. But some of the people that I met at these conventions said, hey, Seppy, you should go to Gamma. And I'm like, I don't have any money to go to Gamma. And they're like, well, it's a Vegas flight, so it's going to be $60, and I'll let you curl up in this corner as long as you keep this garbage bag over your head the entire evening. And I'm like, I can afford that.
Sold.
So through that whole chain of events, and we can talk about that later, we ended up crafting a way to get into distribution, and then our game started selling, which is really, really good. Really, really good.
That's exciting. Well, I think we should share this distribution thing because I think there's a lot of folks out there who either have a game idea or a small game, or maybe they've done a Kickstarter. And how do you take it from that into distribution? So what were some of
that, and especially, I mean, that seems to be a huge issue right now, is that Kickstarter to distribution thing.
And you just go to Gamma and it like magically happened? It had to be more complicated than that.
It's probably magic.
No.
No magic. No.
Well, I feel like magic happened, but not that I did it. It's like something happened there. Like, first of all, everybody has some superpowers, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody has some qualities that they have that allows them to succeed, and tapping into those is really important. Okay. And making games and running a game company, even a tiny, insignificant one like myself, is really a morale-based sort of activity. Yeah, I mean, you guys have done 220, this is 226 episodes of fantastic content. You understand the importance of morale.
Yes.
Okay, but you also understand your star qualities and your powers and the awesomeness of your fans. These are all things that have led to your awesome success.
Well, don't overstate it, for sure.
Right.
So, Russ and Craig, what would you define as your superpowers? Just give me one each.
Tenacity.
That is a great superpower.
Yeah, my superpower would be riding on coattails.
Nice.
True.
You know which coattails to ride on.
That is important.
It is. Mine is, I do what I'm told.
See, that's a good one.
Following direction is a very good power. Yeah.
People follow direction, but most people usually will stop, pause, think about what they're, I spent some time in the military. Right. It's just, okay, you give me tell me to go something, I will go do this thing, and then I will figure out its value later.
Right.
Right. And so Gamma, that's how Gamma started for us. You know, people said, hey, go to Gamma. I'm like, okay, I can't afford it. They're like, still go to Gamma. I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. And so I did. And the thing that I really took away from Gamma was how much work, hard work, pain, and suffering the people who do distribution live through.
Oh, wow.
Have you guys gone to a Gamma?
No.
I have not. It's been on my list of things I'd like to do, but it's never actually happened, unfortunately.
Okay, so imagine speed dating with all the other important people who are buying or selling games at either 15-minute or half an hour increments for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day for 3 straight days.
Wow.
Oh.
That,
Okay,
that sounds like the opposite of fun to me.
Yeah.
It's just the grueling nature to even get time with these people who are just like, okay, I'm supposed to see this person because they've flown in from Singapore, or I'm supposed to see this person because this is the only chance I'm gonna get any FaceTime with them. Blah 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 blah. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was the first thing, and then I actually snuck in between one of these meetings because somebody said I needed to introduce myself to this person because Minnesota is sort of a mecca of board games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, FFG is here, Z-Man's here,
Right.
Atlas is here, Chip Theory is here, Leader Games is here, Prolific Games is here, Floodgate is here, we're here. I mean, and there's like probably a half dozen more that I'm not mentioning, but I mean, there's a lot of us.
It's a game in
And
town. Yeah.
It is. It's awesome. So I went there and I get in with, and the distributor looked at me and he goes, I'm sure I'm supposed to talk to you. I'm sure you're a great person. If I see you here next year, maybe we can talk.
Ooh. Ouch.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I tilted my head a little bit. He goes, and he sees this look on my face like he's crushed my dream.
Right.
And I was like, he's like, and I'm like looking at him, and it's like the 1,000-yard stare that he's giving me. He's like, I've crushed so many people's dreams. This another one is just, it is another like paper cut on my soul. But I will take this time to explain to you. And he looks at me, he goes, I see admissions 900 to 1,000 submissions from people like you
Ugh.
every month.
Oof.
Wow. Ouch.
And I was like, well, that's fair. And I'm like, and so that entire thing, I'm like, there's no pleasure. There's no pleasure for this distributor to like
Right.
want to crush people's dreams. That seems awful. And this speed dating business situation that they're in, running from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, it was so like grueling. And I was like, hey, I need to take a step back. I should not be looking at distribution about, hey, my game is great. What about me? I should be looking at it. Hey, you guys have a really hard job. What can I do to help you?
Ooh, nice question changer. Nice job, Seppy. So how did you reverse that situation?
It took like 2 or 3 different conversations for me to get that to happen. I learned by mistakes.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm that guy.
As do we all.
Right.
Yeah, I face tank so much stuff. It's kind of ridiculous. So I got FaceTime with Alliance. I got FaceTime with ACD Michael there. It was great. All these people were super patient despite how exhausted they were. Having people who would recommend me into conversations helped a lot so I could start. And they started helping me list like the things that they needed and so forth. And I got into the submission process for these kinds of things. And all these submissions that I did at Gamma ended up all failing. So I did the paperwork, I got through the thing. And so, but it was a super critical moment for me to realize how much the business of gaming, when you had to look at it, for me, this is obviously love. For what you guys do, it's obviously love, and you can see it in your fan base and everything that you guys do, and your fans are awesome. But for these people, this is their livelihood, and they're choosing the fates of these people who are doing these projects out of love.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also, very much business. And so, I went through all that. I went through all the submission process, and I got my rejection letters. And my business partner, Bob, who's the other half for Fight in a Box, said, "Hey, Seppy, I own a game store. Why don't you come with for ACD Game Day?" Have you guys gotten to go to any of these distributors' game days?
I've been to
No.
one, but
Which one did you get to go to?
I was a local one that happened. And I was involved with our friends at Game Salute back in the day. I don't know. It's been a long time now, so I'm sure they've evolved slightly. Go ahead with what's one of the ones you were at. Where did you go?
ACD Game Day is amazing. It's like let's make a deal sort of cocktail party hour. It is just so much fun. Now, where everything in Gamma is so like compacted because there's all these people talking. AC Game, those guys do a great job. It's in Madison, so that's like my backyard, right? It's on the lake itself. The facility is fantastic, and they run it in such a way that everybody is given an opportunity to experience generosity and interact with each other and learn. And so the pressure cooker, which is Gamma, is reversed in ACD.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Michael, who's one of the buyers for ACD, I ended up getting into a few games with him, and I know he was responsible for my being rejected for distribution for those guys. So I'm like, there's no way. I mean, considering the atmosphere and how awesome everybody's doing, there's no way that I should rush him with this question of, my low gamer self-esteem and why I got rejected. I'm like, no way is that fair. No way is that going to be helpful. Let's just hang out and play some games. Let's go back to the basics, which is, hey, gaming is fun. So I got to play Smirk and Dagger's game where there's the Petri dish and the viruses are happening. Yeah, so I got to play that in its early prototype phase when they were figuring out, how many they wanted to buy. And then the ambulance game where you're trying to save people in the ambulance.
Paramedic, yep.
Yeah, Paramedic. That game is super stressful. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
It is ridiculously stressful. So I got to play that, a couple of rounds of that. And, and drinks always help. And at the end of it, I got to ask him, I'm like, hey, you guys rejected me. Or I didn't say me. You rejected our game. Internally, it feels like me. But, you rejected our game. Can you tell me, can you give me the criteria why so I can do better?
Right.
And, it's at the end of the night and there's nobody around. So he wasn't on the spot. And he was super, super, super duper gracious about it. He goes like, yeah, Seppy, it takes us a lot of overhead to take on a new person who's going to provide, stuff for us. And I didn't see enough titles from you and as frequently as I would like to want to have you guys for me to do the overhead.
Right.
Right. To take you on as a single entity. But he's like, I like your game and I think I could sell, 100 or so of them easy. And I'm like, oh, that's great. So if I had somebody else sell them to you who you already buy from, would you be okay with that? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right. A couple of people I know might do this for me. And so I was like, hey, I'll go run to Atlas Games and tell them this. And then if you're comfortable with it, they would do, maybe they'll do it. He goes, sure. And of course, we have a good relationship with the Muson Minis people. They're also somebody that ACD buys from. So
right.
I was like, okay. So I basically went to both of them saying, hey, I pre-sold them on 100 explorative copies of End of the Line. Would you guys like to help me out? And they were super gracious. And so, and because I had already sold them on this. So I went to party A, which is Atlas, and they said, Seppy, we'd love to help you out. Let's see if we can make this happen. And then we got the two of them together, and they said, yeah, absolutely. If you sell them to us, then you will make this happen. And yeah, and that's how it happened. Does that make sense?
That's awesome. Well, there's a bunch of cool parts to that story, Seppy. I think the first one is I love your grit in not giving up. I think that's a lot of where
Yeah.
people don't succeed because they get rejection and they're like, well, clearly someone else just didn't get rejection and I didn't get lucky. And that's not really how it works in the real world. You have to keep trying until you succeed. So I love that part of the story. And then I also love that you really dug in and followed up on the why you were being rejected, found the reason, and then were able to solve that problem for this buyer, right? I mean, that's and the distributor, which is really clever. And now you may have future opportunities with them because you got this rolling. So I think that was really lots of cool things going on there. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of luck involved, obviously. There's a lot of just doing what people told me. And then there was a lot of generosity from Atlas and ACD and so forth and one. And then after Atlas picked us up, because they saw that we had a business model, locally, how I was able to prove that this game had viability was there's a local chain of game stores called Games by James.
Right.
And they bought lots and lots of copies of End of the Line. And so I was able to give a business case for people buying the game.
Yeah.
So, it helped that when I was an adult, I, ran marketing practices for software companies. And so I sort of understood how to put a proposal together, and I understood, explaining ROI and business things. And how, no one wants to be awful to people, especially in an industry built on love like gaming is.
Right.
Find why, what is the necessity of them having to act this way? And so that helped out a lot. But yeah, no, it all started because, obviously getting the game in through the Kickstarter and it being 3 months early, everybody's like, oh, that's great. Then the local distributor that picked us up, Aladdin, they would distribute, so I could build a little bit more of a business case. And then Games by James picked them up for their 9 stores, and then reordered again. And so it just, then I could spell out my, people are buying this game. This is the response. This is the things I'll do to help you support the product that you're buying from me, and those kinds of things.
That's awesome. Well, that's fantastic. So
That is.
obviously Squirrel Die reprint, successful, End of the Line launched, and now you've got it into various forms of distribution through hook, crook, or pandering, which I love. So now what's next for Fight in the Box? I was on your website, and I saw very little details, but I saw this title for this game that you guys apparently are working on that really intrigued me. What is this next thing coming from you guys?
Back to the beginning of I'm working on several creative projects, and one of them is the next small box game from us. There are a couple of different publishers who have asked to see our stuff now, and they want to see it before. And I'm really flattered that they would even entertain like an email from me and say, hey, I want to try your game. So they were asked for a small box game, and I was like, okay. I started on a game about a Rube Goldberg clockwork meat processing plant in 2009. If you guys have played at End of the Line, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, tongue in cheek and in a very dark way, I always make the argument that, if you liked The Road, the book or the movie, this is a fun board game take on that. Right. In the same way, I was like, did you, how much time did you spend with the jungle? And I was like, and so, yeah. So there was this phase where I was going through, but in 2009, and the game was, it could not be played because there was just not the mental futziness to do all the things to create the mousetrap that catches the man that does none of that could happen. So, what ended up happening is that I shelved it a little bit. Then I worked on End of the Line, and then all that stuff happened, and we come back to it, and my rep from Panda Game Manufacturer, I told him about this project. He was like very interested, and I was like, well, sure, why don't I'll just pull it out of the game cobbler and see what happens. And I, instead of looking at it as it was, I decided I'd just minimize it to its bare like conflict. how minimal could I do this thing that I completely overwrought and overdesigned? And so processing is sort of that next small box game for us. It plays in a half an hour. It's super fun. It's sort of a democracy of bad choices. Do you remember the old black and white Twilight episode called To Serve Man?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, you guys remember V.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So processing is a game about being conquered by the Confederated alien overlords, or cows.
Sure.
And you all being enslaved, now that you're members of the Confederacy as a slave race of the Confederacy, to determine the fates of your fellow men. So there's a council of, depending on how many players you're playing, 2, 4, 6, whatever, or 3 or 5, whatever it works for you. And you're voting for one of the classic alien things that happen to like a group of entities. And in any group of entities, you can have 1 to 3 entities, and they're either bovine or human. Okay?
So I see where this is going.
And in the same way, just like Cartman gets an anal probe, in just the same way, you can free the humans or cows or whatever's in that lot. You can probe them, because aliens love to do that, or you can process them, like turn them inside out, or whatever the V people were doing with the people by the pool.
How to serve man. Right, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so yes. So everybody plays, and you're trying to fulfill one of the aliens' agendas that they have put in front of you. And whoever does this the best does not get turned into meat at the end of the game.
Ah, excellent. I, for one, welcome our new cow overlords.
It's true.
Awesome.
There's mad cow in it. You guys at Captain come play.
I will. I'm just
I promise it'll be
great,
a fun half an hour.
All the great one-liners in End of the Line, I can just imagine them being multiplied in a game like this. So that's exciting.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So that is processing.
Nice.
It's bumped up in the it bumped itself up in the sort of project queue because it's been going really, really well. Mm-hmm. So we're really excited about that one.
Now, is this going to be a Kickstarter, Seppy, or is this going right to production for you guys?
I don't know. It's a small form box, and when we get feedback from people and see where they want to take it, where they would like the game to be in their game library or in their con experience, we'll figure that out. I've got to figure out what I want to do with the art, because it's sort of a dark topic, and I prefer minimal and graphic, but maybe there'll be something extra in there. So that is the real consideration for me right now. Like variants, because I love variants, and sort of art considerations are where that is.
Got it.
Cool.
The next one, of course, is my magnum opus, which is Conquest Princess Pew Pew Pew.
Yes, I want to hear about this. So
this has been hovering around for a while.
Yes, I remember you mentioned it once before, and now you've got a tantalizing picture on your site, which is kind of hidden. You have to go to the Fight in the Box website, hover over games, don't click one of the drop downs, just click on games. And if you do that, then down at the bottom, Seppy has a taunting picture of some wood carved rockets with what looks like some little dice trays, and then Conquest Princess.
There's a lot of stuff for this. So the first build for Princess was super successful. It was super amounts of fun, but it played in about 2.5 hours.
Right.
Which is a huge ask for people. All right, let me back up a little bit. In Conquest Princess, you use fashion to overcome galactic tyranny.
As you do.
As you do. So think of it as Star Wars meets Zoolander. Not the second awful movie, but the first movie that you still love.
Yes, this is. I already like where I'm going.
So you put on outfits to fight, and they come in episodes. The first episode is Conquest Princess versus the Fashion Tyrant. Sure. Mugaga is the Fashion Tyrant, and you must break into his inner sanctum and stop him from using his ray of tyrantry on the galaxy. Okay, so the first version was very much Mean Girls. The girls were all or princesses, because you can have male princesses. They were all being mean to each other. They were conquering land, stealing outfits, and they were trying to make the perfect outfit. So in the final confrontation with Mugaga, they could have be dressed to kill.
Now let me ask you this, Seppy: if two princesses show up to the final confrontation wearing the same outfit, what kind of challenges therefore have to be dealt with?
When that happens,
because I feel like that would be a bigger problem. I think we'd go to a place where the bad guy didn't matter anymore, and the princesses would be at each other's throats.
Exactly. I mean, Heather's had an impact on me.
Right.
Right?
Who didn't it have an impact on?
Yes, it had a real impact on me. And so the first version was super competitive, and that very question was addressed.
Okay, good.
But we are now 7 whole complete teardowns and rebuilds later.
Wow. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've remade the game 7 times.
Well, fashion is hard. Don't say yes to that dress until it's time, Seppy.
Also, Craig, I caught in the last episode how many times you said, "Don't be throwing shade at me."
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I love that. That filled me with inspiration and love.
Yeah.
It gives them street cred. It keeps
that's
them,
right.
Keeps them legit, Seppy.
I try to keep my pulse on the my finger on the pulse of my pulse on the finger. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I failed.
What he said.
Yes. Yeah. It's a sham. It's a sham.
I laughed out loud. It's fantastic. Keep on doing it.
No, thank you. Thank you.
I will try. How they say, make it until you make it.
That's right. I say that too.
Yes, we're still faking it. 225 episodes later.
That's right.
Still faking it.
So the latest build of Princess is cooperative. And so you're all working together. And so you have, friendship powers and leadership powers, and the outfits are very different and it's streamlined. At Captain Con, I will have a cleaned up version. Please give it a quick go. It plays
I feel like
now.
I feel now like you're closer to Sailor Moon meets Star Wars. Is that?
Yes. No,
accurate?
it is still a little. Yes. Okay. I would think it is much more Sailor Moon and a little. It's still Zoolander and Star Wars. I love Barbarella.
Yeah. Oh, a classic. Yeah.
Yeah. Jane Fonda didn't apologize for anything in her career except for this movie, but I love this movie. This movie is a real sweetheart for me. I also got to see, its counterpart is Zardoz, right? I love the Zardoz. And I got to see one of our fans posted that they dressed up their toddler as Sean Connery from Zardoz and went as the giant head.
Okay, well, you don't think of that every day, but that's excellent.
No, it made me feel like there's hope for humanity, really.
I think you're right. Well, this is exciting. So I'm excited to see the artwork in this game because I feel like that's a place that this thing could really shine.
Mm-hmm. All right. Speaking of the artwork, I need to ask you guys a question.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Yeah. So I need you to speak to this. I'm sure it happened, but I was wondering if you guys remembered. Okay? I want you to go back to the 2010 Adepticon board game Sunday night.
Wow. Okay. This is way back. That's from the Wayback Machine dial. Way back. Okay.
Do you remember a Jeff and Jason putting on a theatrical skit for you to win a copy of Surviving?
You mean Survive?
Yes.
Escape from Atlanta. Escape Atlanta. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Did you do this? Did you make your fans of the people there like play games?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And act things out. Act things out. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, sing.
I got in trouble on that one because no one knew what I meant by quarter deck, and they all made fun of me.
Yeah.
Because I said, okay, you're on a quarter deck, and they all went, we don't know what a quarter deck is. And I said, well, then none of you get a game.
Right.
Do you remember those two individuals doing Titanic?
I do.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is how small the world is. Jeff and Jason, shout out to those guys.
Yep.
Jeff is a designer for the Dallas Stars.
Really?
Wow. Really? Holy cow.
He's a fan of ours. he wants to do one of the fashion types for Conquest Princess.
And he's a great actor.
Right.
And yes. So
Really?
Graham
that is a
helped
small
out with
world.
Squirrel or Die is going to do art direction for Conquest Princess. We're going to have, there's currently 6 fashion types. The princesses are called princesses because they work for an organization called the Terran Intergalactic Armed Rescue Agency, or Tiara.
Right. Oh, okay. That makes yes.
And so Tiara is one of the fashion types. There's bio, there's hypnotic, there's 8-bit, because in the future, Minecraft, the clothing line, is a real thing.
Of course it is.
And so forth and on. And so that is that. When you talk about art, I wanted to verify that you guys made people do art for you in the form of theater to get paid.
Yes.
We did do that. Yeah.
And that you guys remembered their performance because they wanted to know if you did.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Performance. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. People work for prizes on this show. It's a thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so fantastic. What a great story. And I did not know. Wow. That is a small world. That's exciting.
Yeah, the world is incredibly small, and when people do things that they love or interact with folks, then these ripple out. No amount of icebergs or being on frozen doors will stop the love that you've generated to reach all and come back to other people.
It's just one of those things. That's
That's
awesome.
right. You send those ripples out there into the pond, and they come back to you.
Right. So Seppy, when's this thing hitting the streets? Is this something? So it sounds like both Processing and Conquest Princess, you're going to have playable versions of those at Captain Con this year in February?
Yes, you guys could tell me how ready it is. I would love fans. I mean, I love Captain Con. I would love our fans of Captain Con to tell me how ready things are, because that's what we ended up doing when it was time to release End of the Line. I started working on End of the Line in 2010.
Yeah.
So
cool. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting. Speaking of End of the Line, the expansion, the Inevitable Machine Revolt.
We all knew it was coming.
It is. Westworld should have given you it. We are in the Platinum Age of television. We've gone beyond the Golden Age of television. We're in the Platinum Age of television. Westworld should have told you.
As sci-fi fans, that is certainly true.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh yes.
So the Inevitable Machine Revolt so we are testing right now the Kickstarter stuff for that. So if we were going to start something first quarter, we would probably target somewhere around February, and it would probably either be Processing or the Inevitable Machine Revolt. And the Inevitable Machine Revolt is just playable and awesome.
That's great.
So
cool.
That is sort of that would be the closest thing I would say to being done.
Okay. Very cool.
Right. And then I'm working on the future of Eden Prairie.
So what is that? That is
all right.
That's almost as crazy as Conquest Princess. What's that about?
Okay, so Eden Prairie is an actual place. It sounds like a made-up place, like somebody in a dystopia novel would make up of that. But Eden Prairie is a real place in Minnesota, and it's a game about being a city councilman and making again poor choices are hard choices to try to win the game. But it is sort of a legacy choices game.
Oh, interesting.
So when you finish playing the game, you leave all the cards out and the board state stays. And so when you start the next game, you start from the board state you were the previous game.
Oh, interesting. So you can't, but if you pick the game up, then you've reset the game.
Yeah, that's a thing. So, but each game is only like 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. So it's a quick.
Oh.
So it's an afternoon. You blast through 5 or 6 or 7 sessions, and you've had a story.
Right. Yeah. In an hour, you're halfway through the story, and it's going to come out in multiple acts. So we're trying that out right now.
So is this kind of like Parks and Rec, the board game?
Russ is really good at pinpointing the through line.
Well, it's all about
that's
getting
his
the visual
superpower.
in your customers. I'm a product manager.
Right.
I gotta
That's
pitch
his
these
superpower.
Things. Right.
That is a great superpower. And I'm glad you're thinking that way. I come from Detroit, right?
Right.
And this idea of these choices, Detroit was like the city, the manufacturing great mecca for the United States in the late 1950s.
Right.
and then it made poor municipal choices over and over and over again, and it turned it into something that is post-apocalyptic.
Right.
And so, to that ends, I thought I would take an anecdotal story through a game. And it has 3 acts. Let's just say Eden Prairie, the future of it is a little dark, but it's a fight-in-a-box game. You can't,
Right.
Right. Yeah, Princess is the most uplifting title we've ever attempted. Maybe that's why it's had some.
Right. I think it's you're fighting the box, so Dark Future's your middle name. Well, actually,
it really is. It's not Hugs in a Box.
It is really your middle name, but right after Inna,
I was gonna say
right after Inna,
wrong.
it's Dark Future.
Yeah, people occasionally confuse us with Hugs in a Box, but I tell them that's a very different service and not legal in a lot of states.
No. I don't even know how to respond to that.
Done.
Well, Seppy, that's exciting. So Future of Eden Prairie is way out there. That won't be.
Yeah, that's conceptual. That's conceptual. The stuff that people can play when they see me at cons, they can play processing, fun, half an hour. They can try to get a spot for Conquest Princess.
But it's hot. It's the magnum opus. It's the be all end all. So when you get this out,
that's right.
Is this like your Dark Tower trilogy, which is really 7 books? Are you done when this is over?
I don't know, but it has custom dice in it. And do you know how much time it takes to cut stickers and make custom dice?
Yes, I know that actually.
Oh my gosh! And there's some really interesting elements. And obviously, if you think dress up and blasting things and fashion all should go together, then this could be for you.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the other day. I was like, you know what we need? That's awesome. Well, Seppy, thank you so much for filling us in. This is fantastic. I'm super excited to see Captain Con. And I can't wait to try all 3 of these things. The new expansion for End of the Line. Will that be there too? Can I try that also?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So the new expansion for End of the Line.
Now, when you go to Unplugged, are you showing anything or are you just going there for fun?
I was planning to just go because, I work the booth with the Atlas folks now.
Right. Oh, yes. Right. Yep.
Because they're like, hey, if we distribute games, would you like to run the games? And so Atlas's big, 2 big releases for PAX Unplugged are Witches of Revolution and the new version of Squirrel or Die, which they help do that kind of stuff. Yeah. I was just going to go do that because that's enough.
Yep.
But my fans asked if they could inevitably machine revolt, and I was like, I guess I will do this thing because you asked and you are awesome. And so IMR will probably happen at PAX Unplugged and processing will but I'm not bringing Princess. That is.
No, he draws the line. I draw the line.
He draws the line at the Princess.
Right, cool. So if I come by the Atlas booth, then you will show me either processing or the inevitable machine revolt.
I will show you the box where they're in, and then I will tell you when I will be at we have a whole demo table in the demo area.
All right, awesome.
And if you want to come and play, and then I would love you to come and play with the various folks who I think are super fun who want to give this a go.
All right,
now I'm going to call Shenanigans on time travel and say, you probably mentioned this in achievements.
I did probably mention, but I will talk a lot about. I talk a lot about. I talk a lot about Atlas games in achievements because I've been playing a lot of them.
Verb tense is very difficult with time travel.
It is. It's tricky. And you don't want to get in the time loop.
I'm looking into the future where I'm being left by myself for an entire weekend. That's what I'm looking at.
And if
I'm looking back, and I think my achievements was pretty scant. That's what I think.
All right.
But
Have
anyway.
you guys watched Future Man? Speaking of time travel.
No, I just saw a commercial for it. Frozen on my Hulu.
Well, let's talk about that in achievements because
he tried.
I tried Future Man and I had a failed start. Let's just put it
okay.
Failure to launch. Failure to launch Future Man.
But that's what we call backshadowing because we already talked about it. All right.
Retro shadow.
And with that, we're going to hear from Total Fangirl, and then we're probably going to hear more about PAX Unplugged, but I'm not entirely sure yet because the future is very hard to foresee.
That's right. We're in a loop.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, Total Fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy, and Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakelin and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. My shout out this week is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. We went to an all-new convention the weekend before Thanksgiving. We went to PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia, which was a first for PAX. They haven't done the Unplugged thing before, and they happened to pick Philly to do it, which is nice because that's not too far from us where we are in New England. So we went to Philadelphia for the weekend, and it was neat. It's, you never quite know what to expect when you go to the first of any convention. And I don't think the organizers really know what to expect when they do the first. Now, I know that the guys who do PAX, it's not like it's their first rodeo. They've done this convention thing before, but this kind of a convention where they're going exclusively for Unplugged. It's board games. There was miniature gaming too, but it's this isn't a video game. This isn't the regular PAX. This is a different crew. This is a little more Gen Con-ish, I guess I would say in nature, but much, much smaller. So we were pretty excited about this because I'm more of a board game person than I am a video game person. So this is pretty exciting for me. And the kids like both and also like miniature wargaming. So they were also very excited. So our little family headed down to Philadelphia and we spent the weekend. We had 3 days there at PAX Unplugged. And here's what we decided. First of all, it's tiny. It is tiny enough that it doesn't necessarily need 3 full days. Like we were there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we took off pretty early on Sunday because we kind of felt like we had seen everything there was to see, I think, in the first 2 days. That said, that first day on Friday, it was like what Gen Con used to be on its first day on Thursday. It was quite enough that when you went in, you could easily stop by all of the different vendor booths and you could see what games they had, and you could easily get demos and talk to the designers and talk to the illustrators and get a feel for what was there. You could see everything. You didn't have to sort of, finagle your way through the crowd to get to each booth, which is really kind of nice because that's one of the drawbacks about a convention is it gets really big. Popularity is great. More people coming means more vendors and more stuff, but it also means it can get a little tricky to navigate things like the vendor hall. And the vendor hall was very easy to deal with at PAX Unplugged. And they had nice wide aisleways. It was really, in terms of how they laid it out, the layout was great. I was really pleased with that. And we got to see quite a bit. And it was nice to be able to do that. Picked up a couple of games right off the bat. The second day on Saturday, it was definitely more crowded, but even with the crowds being bigger as expected on the weekend, it was still very easy to make your way around the vendor booths. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't so crowded you thought, I got to get out of here. We also saw a huge, and it's not like separate rooms. They kind of just have like a section. Imagine a great big hall, and the first, third of it is a vendor space, and the second third of it is open gaming, and the last third of it is where more of your competitive, all your tournaments are happening. And then behind that area, sort of like if you chopped off the top of this giant rectangle, was a spot where they had their main stage. So everything was sort of together, which also made it really easy just to get around from place to place. Now, we didn't see as much open gaming happening on Friday, and on Saturday when we got there, we had a game that we wanted to play. We took it out of the box, we get ready to play, and there's like a million tables open. We're like, let's sit right in the middle of the emptiness. So we sat in the middle of the emptiness. By the time we finished our game, people were looking for places to sit. It got that crowded, and as soon as we got up, there was somebody who took our spot. The good thing about that is that it shows you how many people are there and playing games. And I think everyone had a chance to buy whatever they wanted to buy, to borrow whatever they wanted to borrow from the little lending library. But there were a huge number of people playing games and people looking for players. So it definitely felt, excuse me, it felt like a board game convention. They could have truly used more tables for open gaming, which is an easy thing to add. And I bet next year it probably won't be an issue. They'll probably have more tables so that nobody has to, sort of jockey for space. Although everyone was really good about scooching down and making room and fitting as many people as we could onto each giant table so that everybody could play the games they wanted. I think the only real disappointment that maybe I think more was Russ and my oldest daughter had was that as far as miniature gaming, there wasn't that wasn't as much of a focus. And there was only like one cool table. I want to say it was Privateer Press made that had like a giant wall, and it like for terrain, not like a human wall, a terrain sized wall. And you could play there, but it was a very small section. Everything else, the tables were pretty, they really weren't exciting. So if you were a miniature gamer, there wasn't as much of an incentive to break out your stuff. Hold on, I have to take a sip of my drink. I have a cold. However, it was still a lot of fun to play. And one of our favorite things that we did a few PAX Easts ago was the Acquisitions Inc. when they play their D&D campaign live on stage. It was late, or at night. I want to say we got on at 8:30. It started at 9 and it ran to like 11:30 or something. Me and my youngest didn't even make it till the end. She was getting tired, so we took off. But gosh, if we could have kept our eyes open, we'd have stayed, because that is hilarious. If you've never taken the time to watch them play live, whatever convention you're at, whatever version of PAX you happen to attend, it's hilarious and it's absolutely worth it. It's really, really fun. It's laugh out loud. It is totally not PC and safe for the wee ones, because there's the occasional swear and completely inappropriateness, but it is really, really fun, and it lived up to expectations this year. So our first PAX Unplugged, we liked it a lot. I think we would definitely go again. We probably would not aim to be there all 3 days unless suddenly it gets gigantic over the years, because it's really more a 2-day convention. Think all the coolness of a con that's run by a company who does national stuff, but more on your small local con scale. So kudos, PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia this year was fantastic.
Hey, and now it's time to talk about our friends at GeekNationTours.com.
I need a vacation.
I love a good vacation. I love to travel. I love to go to exotic places. And as a geek, I'm always trying to figure out where I should go next. And really, the best place to go check that out is our friends at Geek Nation Tours. You head over there, you click on their tours link, and let me tell you, they will inspire you in ways you did not think possible. They have great tiles over here. And for example,
crazy.
You can't help but miss the giant Got Dragons tour. And Geek Nation Tour is planning out a Game of Thrones tour where you can go check out sites and places where you can see Game of Thrones being filmed or was filmed, locations that are inspired by or inspired elements.
Dubrovnik, one of the coolest places.
Belfast. These scenes and these pictures. I'm scrolling through here and seeing Reykjavik. So many cool things that are just it's just amazing. I want to go do this now. And what's great about it is Terrace and the team over there, they know not only the places they can go to really inspire these things, but also venues and other events you could do. Let's say you decided to go with them to Adepticon next spring, for example.
Which would be a great idea.
It would be a fantastic tour. Terrace does a great job. It's great because people are so passionate about Geek Nation Tours that they go again and again. There are people, we run into folks because we hang out with the Geek Nation Tours crew at the end of the Adepticon gaming event every year, and there's always a good mob from the Geek Nation's Tours crew. What always impresses me is they're the same people year after year, Craig, that go with Terrace every single time because they get to know each other. It's like going on that cruise with your friends over and over again, and they know Terrace is going to take them to new and interesting places around town.
And same thing with the Gen Con crew.
Exactly. You meet
Gen Con tour.
That opening dinner at Gen Con when you get to meet industry insiders and people from different podcasts and just folks who help bring the gaming industry to life. They're all there at your fingertips, chatting with you, showing you new games, talking about how they do what they do. It's just you can't get any closer to this stuff.
The key to a good group tour, and I've been doing them for 25 years, is a group tour leader that knows what you want and knows where you're going. And that you get every time you go with Geek Nation Tours. They know all the cool stuff to see. They know the stuff that you would have missed if you were trying to put it all together yourself. And they're putting together a group of people who all like the same things. It's really a fabulous idea for a vacation. Whether you're talking about going to one of the cons or miniatures in the UK, their great tour where they go through. If for some reason the water in Nottingham has affected the people, and that's where so many of the greatest games come from. You're going to go through that whole area. It's just he knows all the different bits and pieces to put together to make a great vacation.
It is fantastic. I'm looking at the Christmas with Krampus tour they're doing in Germany, where they're going to show you.
Yes, we should tell him he misspelled Christmas.
I think that's intentional. But anyways.
Okay. Oh, the cake. Oh, I see.
Yes, Krampus with a K. See
Yeah, I get it.
But it's just fascinating. But imagine all the cool traditions you'll learn about and why this stuff happens. It's just really, really fascinating. So if you want to know more about all this crazy goodness, there's just a very simple way to do it. Head on over to geeknationtours.com to check out all the hotness.
You're listening to the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what?
Who writes these?
Hey, welcome back. And as we mentioned at the top of the show here, Seppy and I were both fortunate enough to go to the new hotness from our friends at PAX. PAX Unplugged was just held last weekend, right? Over in not last weekend, 2 weeks.
Philadelphia,
Pennsylvania, exactly. Now, I thought maybe Seppy might be good to start off by kind of reminding our listeners sort of a little bit about what PAX is, because PAX has now become sort of a convention circuit, if you will.
Yeah, Prime, East, West, Unplugged. Am I missing one?
Australia.
Oh, yeah.
South. So PAX started Penny Arcade Expo. So it's from our friends at Penny Arcade, the well-loved and well-known webcomic. Back in about, I think it was 2004, they started the first Penny Arcade Expo, which became known as PAX, P-A-X. And this was held originally in Washington State. And like I said, it was about 2004. And initially, if I remember the story correctly, mostly Penny Arcade the comic is about video games. And although they've always occasionally, if you are a fan of the comic, every once in a while they'll sneak in a story about a war machine or a board game or 40K. So you do know that the creators of the strip are also into gaming, unplugged gaming. But back then they were mostly about video games, and at that time, E3, the Electronic Expo, the big video game expo, was doing some things a lot of people didn't like. It was getting too big for its own britches. It was media only. It was all booth babes and everything else. And so Penny Arcade decided, what if we did our own convention that was just about video games and was really for the fans of games, and there were no booth babes allowed, and we just kept it really kind of, straight up, and then we had panels, people come do it. So they started out small and grew very rapidly. So they started out with PAX in Washington. Then in about 2010, the second PAX started. So as the cons grew from like 3,000 to 9,000 to 15,000 to 50,000 to 70,000, they kind of felt like they didn't want to get much bigger than that because it would lose, that's already pretty big. So they decided they'd have more of them in different regions instead of having one massive one in one place a year. So in 2010, they had the very first PAX East, which I managed to go to, and that was at the Heinz Convention Center in Boston. And it's since grown to the BCEC in Boston, which is massive. And so that happens. And then during that time period since then, they now run in Australia. They just had that not too long ago. Our friend Luke Ritalik, who's been on the show, he goes to that. They've added PAX South. But a few years ago at PAX East in particular, and I think it's happening at PAX Prime too, Seppy. I don't know if have you go to Prime also?
No, it's on my list.
So I think at some point in 2010, it was only video games. But at some point, not too long after that, they started creating a section near the vendor hall for board games as well. Board games, miniature games, RPGs. And so Privateer would come there, and Fantasy Flight have a small booth. They didn't have the kind of booths you see at Gen Con, but they had booths. And for this year, the first time, the folks at Penny Arcade announced that they were going to try this thing called PAX Unplugged, which meant a convention happened to be Philadelphia they chose, and this convention, which they just had for the first time, was only non-video game gaming. So RPGs, board games, card games, anything that wasn't digital, they had. And so they had a vendor hall dedicated just to that, as well as panels and events and shows just around that kind of gaming. So it's kind of neat to see the show grow up from video games, add, analog games, and now they're experimenting with having one pure sort of Origins/Gen Con sort of pure gaming experience.
Now, this just occurred to me. Are they still going to have board games at their major cons, do you think?
I would assume so. Because like at PAX Australia, they don't have both Unplugged and regular, and at PAX East, they still had both this last year. So in this past year, PAX East had both, and PAX Unplugged had it. So
I know PAX East will have both again.
Yeah, well, you're probably. So I think they're just. I just think they're experimenting. And so what was interesting about this, so Seppy, what was your expectations? Hearing that they were going to try this Unplugged thing, what going into PAX Unplugged, were you thinking this will be massive out of the gate? Do you thinking, well, maybe they won't get the kind of attendance because mostly video game guys know about them? What were your kind of expectations going into Unplugged?
I was skeptical, especially because they were really close to their vest, or close to their chest with like attendance numbers and what was going to happen. Because they really kept it to themselves. Even from like a vendor side, they didn't even let you know where your booth was until the event.
Wow.
And so that had me a little skeptical. I've always wanted to go to the super big video games con. I want to go to BlizzCon. I want to go to PAX Prime. I want to go to CitizenCon. And simultaneously, that weekend for PAX Unplugged, there was BGG Con in Texas. There was SteamCon in the UK.
Yep. And
then there was a host of little cons like RPG cons here and there and so forth and whatnot. So a lot of cons wanted that last con of the season spot.
Yeah.
So it was sort of I was like skeptical, like what kind of audience is going to show up? How big was the audience? And how are they going to treat the Unplugged audience different from a video game audience? And I have to say, I was like very happy at the end of the day. Any fear that I had was completely put aside. They ran a great show.
It was really so. One of the things, my favorite thing about PAX is, well, I have mixed feelings. So one of the things PAX does very differently than, well, first of all, I will say this. The enforcers, which are basically the people that help run the con and make sure everything runs smoothly, they have a bunch of volunteers called enforcers. They all wear bright red shirts that say enforcer on them. You can't miss it. But the enforcers are so well trained. These people are like super polite, super on the ball. I've never seen an enforcer like down or not giving a crap. Like they're always right there, just peppy, saying, "This way, sir. Stand right in line here. Please keep the aisle clear." They're just right. They're just really, really. I don't know what their training process is, but it's really good. That level was completely run. One of the things about PAX is very different than Gen Con is you don't pre-sign up for any events. So at PAX, you just wait in line. So you want to go to that panel that's going to feature whomever your favorite game designer is, or internet streaming show, or your favorite podcast doing a panel or whatever. You want to go to that, you wait in line, right? You get there early enough to be one of the people that's going to seat, and if you're too far back in line, they do a really good job of measuring the line length and saying, past this point, won't get into the room, so don't bother waiting. So you don't, you know that part. But that's got pros and cons, right? Pro, you can always have a chance to get to the thing you want by waiting. Con, you can't be guaranteed to get the spot in the panel you want, unlike Gen Con, where you got to do the crazy event sign-up thing, which is really complicated online and everything. But if you get your spot, you get your spot, right? So that's a little different. But I really like that. But what I was interested about, Seppy, and this is sort of interesting as someone who, and I think, Craig, you're similar to me on this, my favorite part of these conventions is the vendor hall. I love to just hang out there and talk to game designers and see the games and see the new stuff. And PAX East, because I haven't been to any other PAXs besides Unplugged in East, PAX East, the vendor hall is massive. Like, you could spend, much like Gen Con, the video game section is huge, and then there's a whole board gaming section. So you could spend, a whole day just getting through half of it playing video game demos or board game demos as you go around. So with Unplugged, I wasn't sure what to expect, except I guess my expectations were initially low because I didn't know who was going to go. So I didn't know if Privateer Press would be there or not. I didn't know if Fantasy Flight Games would be there or not until it got closer. Because you're right, Seppy, they kind of kept it close to the vest on which vendors are going to be there until pretty close to the event as well.
So yeah, that's the thing, because I applied as Fight in a Box as like a little indie guy, because a lot of these conventions are about like legacy. Like your Gen Con booth space is based on, did you do everything Gen Con asked you to do? Right. And have you move up the list based on good behavior and paying in advance, right? And so PAX, has a different model than that, but it's more similar than you think. And so, I applied early and whatever, and I got 0 from them. like not even a back that says, no, you were not big enough or we do not like you enough for you to attend. But Atlas, obviously, they made Gloom. They made all these other kinds of stuff. They only got a 10-foot booth.
Right.
And like Steamforge, they only got a 10 by 10 booth.
Well, that was interesting. So what was crazy was, and this is what surprised me, and I don't know if I was disappointed, I was just surprised. So when I looked at like the vendor list as it got closer, I was like, oh my God, Fantasy Flight's there. Oh my God, Privateer Press is going to be there. Oh my God, Steamforge is there. All the normal players were there. But then the booth sizes blew my mind. Like some of them, like Malifaux, like Weird Games, Weird Miniatures, their booth was the exact same size as Gen Con. That is massive. Like it was like thinking about. But then Privateer Press was like a table.
Yeah,
literally
Matt
like
was
a
sitting there
single
lonely.
table with a black. Not even their sign was even hanging from the ceiling. Where a Gen Con Privateer is also massive. Like it was weird. And Fantasy Flight had nothing for sale. They just had a very small demo area showing off the new Civ and a couple of their other games, very tiny. Like nothing to buy from them, which is similar to what they've done at PAX East because they think of it as a video game thing. So I don't know if some of these companies just didn't know how big Unplugged would be and they just wanted to kind of, scout it out.
There's a little bit of that definitely going on. And they made, they were trying to figure out how much of the convention center to make that. So they're like, are we going to basically jump another divider section?
Right.
They could have opened it up and increased it by 50%. And so with the one, but I think a lot of people hedge their bets, and I don't think that's going to happen next year. I think people are going to be all in based on the crowds and the booth performances. I didn't see a single other vendor there who wasn't happy about their con.
Well, that was what was interesting was and what was also interesting was the way the venue was laid out. So PAX normally is in convention centers in such a way that there's a bunch of little rooms where all these little tiny panels are, and then there's usually at PAX East, for example. There's a massive theater in the Boston Convention Center. There's a massive seated theater, like a stage theater situation or a movie theater where they can do big things, like giant things, kind of like the giant one at Gen Con. And there's all these smaller ones. But what's interesting here was instead of a bunch of different rooms, it was most of it. There was a bunch of little rooms, but most of it was this giant room that they just partitioned. So there was the giant room with the vendor, a light curtain partition, and then there was giant open gaming. And in fact, Friday was so sparsely attended that the open gaming area was so big. I was kind of thinking, well, maybe they over anticipated because there's so much unused open gaming area here. I kind of felt bad. I was like, oh no, right? Like I was sitting down on a sea of empty tables and wow, this is sort of, I'm disappointed. And kind of walking in the vendor hall, it wasn't super crowded, but Saturday was a different story. Saturday it was mobbed. Every single seat in open gaming was full. Apparently the way it just laid out, or not everybody knew what to do, they all made sure everybody went Saturday apparently. But the other thing that was weird about the layout was then in addition to the vendor hall being in the same giant room and the open gaming being in the same giant room, then to the far left, they had set up the largest stage. Wasn't really even a stage. It was just an elevated platform in a large part of the same open room with a bunch of chairs set up, divided by a curtain. So the weird thing was, you could be sitting in the open gaming / open play area for miniatures, and then right behind the curtain was the whatever main show was going on, and those can be loud and cheers and everything, or vice versa. You could be trying to watch a show and you'd hear it. So I didn't like that part of the venue. I hope that they get big enough where they can get a separate dedicated room for that. But it was interesting. So it was kind of like a lot of learning was clearly going on. But it was impressive how it all ended up because I had an absolutely fabulous time going through the vendor hall, seeing a lot of the different vendors there. Everybody I wanted to see was there. The open gaming was great, and then also being able to attend the different finding everything was easy because it was all one giant room, really. I mean, what did you think of the layout, Seppy?
I was a little taken back that it was just all one massive room at first, and then I was taken aback again when they filled it. I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many people here all doing these things. And it really created that vibe of we're all participating in this live circuit of gaming.
Yeah.
A couple of things. I don't know if all the listeners understand Philly time. Philly time is weird, compared to a Gen Con time. Gen Con, everything is filled all around the vendor hall and so forth and on, and that's the early part of the night. And then everybody breaks for dinner and they go other places. And then all the events sort of creep out across all of the town as people seek alcohol or whatever they are. And it sort of diffuses, but it basically envelops all of Indy. Mm-hmm. In Philly, everything shuts down at 11 p.m.
Right.
That is strange for somebody who's like, I'm a creature of the night. That's like, okay. Yeah, I know you're just starting to wake up, but no, you can't do anything. Our town shuts down. So that's weird. But what it meant was everybody stayed in the convention hall all the way up until they kicked everybody out.
Right.
And that included on Sunday.
That's
like Sunday, it went to the very last minute, and it was filled with people.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was
really
crazy.
Friday. It was really, and what's interesting too, I thought what was interesting about that in general was like, much like when, because I remember very clearly the first PAX East, very, very clearly. And the first PAX East, like when it came to Boston, you didn't really know it was in Boston. Like, it's not like when you go to Gen Con in Indianapolis, you don't have to be a gamer to know Gen Con's happening, right? Like, so many restaurants are themed. There's frickin' signs on every street corner about gaming. There's cosplay just bleeds out of the convention center everywhere. And something has taken over the town for 4 days, right?
Right.
In Boston,
Columbus, same thing. For Origins, yeah.
Right. But in Boston, when PAX first came, you wouldn't even know. Like, it was, unless you walked into the convention center, it was just like, oh, there's something going on over there because there's people wandering around. Like, you wouldn't know. Over the years, though, you've started to see, it's not the same as Indianapolis, but you're starting to see things like themed cabs, or when the tour trolleys come through that area, there's cosplay in there, or like you can tell that the folks involved near the BCEC know what's going on. PAX Unplugged very much had the Philly doesn't know what's happening right now, and nor is there enough people there yet to meaningfully impact the air. Like, as soon as you'd leave, you'd see some cosplay outside of PAX Unplugged, but as soon as you'd walk like half a block away, you wouldn't know what was happening, right? It was just gone. And even when you went over to like, there's this amazing food area right out. It's kind of like I forget what they call it, Seppy. What's the name of the food?
Something market, Terminal Market.
Terminal Market. Which is kind of like it's kind of like Quincy Market in Boston a little bit. It's like this really, but even bigger. Really, just all kinds of great, amazing food, bakery, like just great everything you'd want, and these little shops indoors. And even when a lot of the folks convention center would leave and go over there to eat, there were so many just other people there for the reasons you didn't. It wasn't like every single person there was a gamer. You could look around and see that it was a quarter maybe. So it's got that sort of that new con feel, I guess is the way to describe it. But it was
all right.
great.
So speaking of Terminal Market,
yeah.
The sandwich to get, and I'm a vegetarian, but apparently we asked a lot of people about the food for Philly and a lot of locals and so forth and whatnot. And I love Philly people, flat out. Just their attitude.
That whole "you got a friend in Pennsylvania" thing is real. Like, they are super friendly.
Oh, I love those people. And Minnesota has Minnesota Nice. Have you guys ever experienced Minnesota Nice?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I've never been.
Okay, so Minnesotans are their own wonderful people, but they would, in a heartbeat, stop to help you get out of a ditch if you were stuck in the snow. But if you asked them their name and said thank you, they would immediately get in their car, drive off at high speeds. That is like the best way. Philly people, and this, we're in the winter together, and so everybody is like nice because that's what's polite, is to be nice.
Right.
I went to Insomnia Cookie, and I was slow to get my order, and the Atlas guys are all Minnesotan people, and the guy at the counter just gave me the dirtiest frickin' look. And that just made me smile. I'm like, oh, he doesn't keep anything inside. And as soon as I got over like making his life like more irritating for 30 seconds, he just went back to being friendly. And it's like, and they were just not prepared for that. And I'm like, oh, there's zero social pretense. If you're being annoying, they will tell you are annoying right to your face. So, Terminal Market, the number one food item is apparently this roast pork sandwich with broccoli brat.
Yeah.
Or broccoli kraut.
So what Philadelphians were explaining to us is that cheese steaks are for tourists. And what locals actually eat Although they are good because you have to have one when you're there. But the roast pork sandwiches are what everybody gets. And yeah, they're one of the premier places I guess in Philly to get it is right there in Terminal Market. Did you try one, Seppy? Well, you're a vegetarian.
No, he's a vegetarian.
So did you convince a carnivore to try it for you and describe the experience?
Yeah, the crazy for it. They said, yeah, it's the real deal. So that's great. Yeah, no, little food things like that.
Yeah,
you know.
The donut did you get those donuts? Did you get the donuts from there? Oh my!
Well, I stepped in a Dunkin' Donuts and ended up in a transdimensional place where I.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Dunks. I forget the name of the donut shop there, but oh my God, they were up there with. So the best donuts in New England, in my humble opinion, is a place called Cane's Donuts.
Oh.
Which, if you do research on the top 20 donut shops in the United States, Cane's is 12. The place inside. That the donut shop inside Terminal Market is on the same list. It's 16. So now, I don't give those kind of lists much credence, but I will tell you this. Those donuts were just as good as Cane's. And I know that's saying something because Cane's donuts are like my favorite donuts on the planet. I send my family there for my birthday to go get them for me. Like, they're awesome. So, like, they were really – so just long story short, amazing food, like some of the best food you'll ever eat right outside the convention center, which is awesome. And I know Origins has a similar sort of setup there.
Yeah,
that was really nice because one thing, Boston PAX East does not have that because where the BCEC is, there is literally nothing right outside of it. You have to take a bus or a car or a very long walk to get to any kind of materially interesting restaurants. So it was a nice change from PAX East to be able to come to PAX Unplugged and like literally walk out of the convention center and have all those wonderful food choices.
I ended up going to like a classic Philly diner called Food on First.
Oh, yeah.
I ended up eating there a bunch of times. The waitress Scarlett took care of me. It was awesome. The Philly people are just great. After I ate there the third time, the cook came out and thanked me and said that he appreciated me. You know, I have a very distinct haircut. And so when I came back the second time and they didn't remember me, one of the Atlas people said, you didn't remember that haircut? And suddenly it clicked for all the staff. And so the third time I came in, they all just, and I was like, oh, you people are awesome.
I have the same friendliness though, like literally 3 times. Because when I walk around the city, I'm not familiar with it. I have my phone out like you do with your maps on it. And I'm figuring out where I'm going to go to find whatever. And literally every time I pulled out my phone to find something, a Philadelphian, can I help you? What are you looking for? Can I help? And it was legitimately helpful. Like they were really engaged and trying to help me. And every time they gave me accurate, correct. And I'm thinking to myself, in New York City or Boston, that just doesn't happen. It's like, that's just not how those cities run. So I was really enjoyed Philly. I really enjoyed the food. As well as I'm with you, Seppy. The convention itself was really one. Were you able to take advantage of any of the panels or anything, Seppy? Other than I know you spent a lot of time running the booth there, but
no. I was in the booth and in open gaming, and your earlier point about things not being sectioned off and people like having to stand in line for certain specific events. Yeah, that's true. But the converse was that people were participating in open gaming and trying new games.
Yeah.
In an absolutely fun and festive environment. So it made the audience so approachable and so much, and everybody was having fun, trying new things, and that environment, that big open environment, allowed people that sort of the freedom to sort of participate in the festival. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and one thing I noticed too, Sepp, and I'm curious if you noticed it because you were working a booth for the whole weekend, seeing people walk up to you, but I got the distinct impression, like, when you're at Gen Con, right, like, it feels like a large percentage of the folks there, this is all old hat. Like, they all know what RPGs are. They all know what board games are. They all know what the new hotness is going to be today. They all know what the thing you want to run and grab is. They all know that game's cool. They all know that game's not so cool. They all know what a deck builder is. They all know all that stuff, right? They're all experts. What I felt here at Unplugged was a little different vibe. I felt like some of these people were experiencing this for the first time. Like it somehow this particular con managed to attract people who don't normally get to these kinds of events.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Does that make
was
sense?
The case.
Like,
no,
people coming in, they'd be like, they didn't know. They knew they knew what hobby board gaming was, and they knew what miniature games. I mean, they knew what all this stuff was, and they played and did some of the games, but they didn't necessarily know they wanted to go to booth A to grab that thing before it sold out. They just were kind of walking around going, "Whoa, I didn't realize there were so many different options." You know, like it was kind of like, does that make sense? Did you feel that when people came to the booth and demoed?
Yeah, no, I really had that sense. People who would not necessarily make the trip to a Gen Con, you know, and people who maybe the BGG's too far down the rabbit hole for them.
Right.
And they were looking for sort of a relaxing experience before all the holiday madness. It pulled in a lot of people and people who are new to conventions. Or at least new to board gaming conventions, at least. They might have been, PAX followers who've now become, who had a good experience with board games, so they thought they would try PAX's board game thing.
Right.
If that's really the case, if that's the demographics, they super duper succeeded.
Yeah, I remember it might have been like the first or second PAX East where Will Wheaton was the keynote speaker. And again, at this time, PAX was almost entirely video game people. And in Will's keynote, he happened to mention the game Small World from Days of Wonder and how much he enjoyed it. And like it was like the entire audience had never heard of Small World before, even though it was already kind of at that point it was a mega board game hit. And like as soon as after that, it sold out of every single booth that had it. Like it was just gone. Like everybody had to buy a copy. And it was almost like, to your point, it was almost like maybe video game fans came to this knowing it was unplugged and were like, because it was such a board game focus, you almost had video game gamers who knew there was the board gaming hobby and the miniature gaming hobby, but really kind of going, so what's this all about? You know, it was kind of cool because I think what was kind of neat about this is I think PAX managed to expose more of the hobby to folks who maybe haven't fully, maybe dipped their toes in but aren't fully immersed, you know?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's good. And, we talked a little bit about making games being exposed to new things, but it's also being exposed to new people.
Right.
We can all learn from each other. We're all more similar than we are different. I seem super different,
It's the haircut, Seppy.
And if I could say that, I'm really, there is common ground for everybody. Yeah, and my games have this weird dichotomy. I got picked up by the #1 prepper Twitter feed. So, wow. And so I've got some hardcore sort of survivalist and conservative fans, and I love those guys. They're out there, but you don't get much more crazy flaming liberal, than I am.
As you can tell by the laugh.
Yeah, seriously, I make games that teach people to laugh at their own pain and the pain of others.
That's right.
And people are like, ooh, wait, ooh. But if you're on board for that kind of adventure, that's that same thing. Bringing all these people together to realize their commonality in creating stories and events and fun. It's great. And there's always like a juxtaposition of crowds that also ends up happening because, their marathon and half marathon happened that weekend too.
Right. Exactly. So
yeah. Origins has a weird one because it has Origins plus Pride plus Father's Day plus Free RPG Day.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
In that Venn diagram, if you fall into all 4 of those, I have 100% sell rate to those guys. Gay dads who came through Origins with their kids, I got every one of them. All 4 of them walked away with my game.
Well, the marathon was hilarious because it was sort of like, spot the marathon runner or geek, right? Mm-hmm. And it was what was kind of funny about that. Like I'm in the hotel going down the elevator, and I was wearing like a little zip up fleece because it was one of my college fleeces, so it kind of looked like a running jacket or whatever. And she's like, "Oh, you're here for the marathon?" I'm like, "No, nope." but it was kind of funny because you couldn't always tell. It was kind of neat. But it reminds me of the biggest dichotomy I've ever seen like that, Seppy, was there's been a couple times at Gen Con when it overlaps with the Colts game, like a big Colts game. And it's kind of funny to go into a bar and see a bunch of gamers in cosplay being mocked by a bunch of football fans all wearing face paint. It's
right.
Who's mocking who now? Because you're all kind of doing the same thing, just for different reasons, right?
I was in one of the microbreweries during a Gen Con, and they were catering to the geek crowd, and they were playing Big Trouble in Little China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there was a table of Colt fans who were trying to heckle the movie. And you should have seen how the crowd turned on those guys and how quickly they got quiet after they realized that this was not acceptable behavior.
Outnumbered.
Yeah, they're like, we're the nerds in this environment. Yes, you are.
So we got to wrap up soon here, Seppy, but what were some of your favorite aspects of PAX Unplugged, and what are you thinking of doing next year? Would you go again?
I'm going to give, since we've had such a positive glow of it, I'm going to give 2 bad things, and then I'm going to go into the positive things.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah, please. Got to be honest.
Okay. The convention staff weren't prepared for what nerds do to the facilities.
Yes.
It was biohazard level of problems at certain points during the day.
Yeah.
So that's very bad. And if you're not on it with hotels, I mean, the Gen Con thing is bad, and it's going to be worse next year. Right. It was a 23-minute Uber ride in low traffic from my hotel to get to the convention center.
Oh wow, you didn't get a close one, huh?
No. Oh my. Yeah. Try to get in that Marriott.
Yeah, I was lucky. I was only a block away, so that wasn't bad at all. But I guess I got in there fast enough. But I didn't reserve my hotel till like 2 months before, so I wasn't like
To realize if you have to make that jump to the next ring out, there's a river and some other things, and it is going to make it very unpleasant. For you. So that
Philly traffic does suck, because I had my car because we drove down. It's only like 6 hours from where I live, so we just drove. But I will say I had my car, and a couple times because I was there with my wife and kids, they were like, maybe kind of fun to drive a little farther out of town to go to some dinner place or whatever for tonight. And we'd literally leave the convention center, and traffic was just gridlocked. And we're like, nope, gonna eat back to the market. So yeah, the traffic in Philly is not good.
No, it's really, really bad. So, to a positive point about the shenanigans, I think people had a great time this year, and I think all the vendors had a good time. People are going to go in big for next year.
I think you're right.
Is my guess. So it'll be more of a spectacle. I would highly recommend going to people if they're looking for a convention on the East Coast side. It's super approachable. You can bring anybody. You brought your whole family, Rusty. You thought it was super approachable and family friendly. And
it was very, very. I mean, I take my family to Gen Con as well, but it was much more. I will say that I don't think you need the entire, unless you're planning to sit down and game. Like, you can easily, based on the size of the vendor hall this year and the number of panels, you could do the key elements of PAX in a day and a half, right? Now, hopefully next year it'll be bigger, probably. Like Gen Con, you can't really do the vendor hall in a day. It takes you more than that. At PAX, you could easily do that. So, which is good, because if you're not familiar with Philly, it gives you time over the weekend to, do some sightseeing, see the Liberty Bell, all that kind of stuff. So you can do those kind of things too. But so we did a bit of both. We had we merged it with like a little family sightseeing as well and other things, and we had a great time. But I think you're absolutely right. It's going to grow, and next year it'll be at the point. It won't be very long before PAX Unplugged is at the level of the other conventions.
If you're looking for an entry level con, a big con, not like entry level like your local con, like. I honestly think Captain Con is like the best run Little Con.
I love Little Con.
I mean, I've been to a lot of them, and I freaking love Captain Con. But for the big con experience, like your first big con, I would recommend this or Origins way before I'd recommend a Gen Con.
Russ, do you think it's gonna, or actually either of you, do you think this might start to pull from Gen Con? I mean, we've been talking for a few years about how big Gen Con's getting, and it's a different feel now, and it's not quite as cool maybe as it used to be. Is this maybe what people have been looking for, do you think?
I think if a couple of the key vendors show up with product, like Fantasy Flight not having material product there, and a couple other big vendors so a lot of people go to Gen Con to get stuff early, right? Right. This year they had a lot of. You didn't have.
You don't get so much of that. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a couple things that were like. I mean, a lot of smaller guys had cool stuff, which is great. And there were a couple things from the bigger guys, but But I think to Seppy's point, because it was so successful, I could see Fantasy Flight showing up next year with a larger booth and more Gen Con-like thing. Now, I don't think they can afford to bring their entire posse all the way out to Philly.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know if they can really do that, because I know Gen Con takes everything they've got to pull it off. So as long as Gen Con is still the home of a couple of the really big players, it's going to be hard to do that.
You know that you've arrived as a convention and as a game company if you plan your releases for your alpha gamers based on the con schedule.
Right.
PAX Unplugged will have arrived in its competing with Gen Con state if the big vendors, say my Christmas release and my PAX Unplugged release is another release I plan for in the year. So you got your Gen Con release, you got your PAX Unplugged release, and if I was the PAX Unplugged people pushing space, I would package it myself as this is your time for your big Christmas release.
Right. But and we've also noticed concerning Gen Con with the impact of Kickstarter is there have been fewer and fewer big releases at Gen Con. So there is more of a shift to Christmas releases for the big releases also anyway. So I wonder how much of the natural flow of the market and the impact of Kickstarter might push towards a more, a later in the calendar PAX Unplugged sort of scenario.
Well, what could happen, what might happen, because I saw this actually happen. So like at Gen Con, I really wanted Clank in Space, and Clank in Space came out there. I went in line for it at Gen Con and was actually the last ones handed out to 2 people in front of me, and I was like, oh, I missed it. But there was a massive pile of it at PAX Unplugged. Like, it was just sitting there. They were selling it. So I'm like, ooh, I can get it right here. So like, what I could see a lot of times happening, especially if you give the position of when PAX Unplugged is, which is the middle of November, assuming that time slot stays, it's almost like you go to Gen Con, to your point, Craig, you demo some of these things. A lot of manufacturers try to get stuff out at Gen Con, but some things slip and they don't quite make it. Right. You're going to see it, learn about it at Gen Con, you go to PAX Unplugged, and there it is, right? So that could be kind of interesting. And if that happens enough, I could see people saying, well, I'm just going to go right to PAX Unplugged because it's all going to be there, right? So you could kind of see that shift happening. So if you're not the kind of gamer that has to have it on day one, but you're still getting it ahead of when maybe most of the local stores have it because it hasn't hit distribution yet, that could be sort of interesting. And as long as PAX Unplugged stays a little more, and I don't know, Seppy, if it really is more affordable than a place like Gen Con, but if it's a little more affordable and accessible for smaller companies. Because what was kind of neat was because people like Privateer Press and Fantasy Flight didn't have big booths, it gave more credibility to the smaller vendors, right? Because now a lot of folks of different levels.
Less competition, right?
Right. I mean, it wasn't like
for the buzz.
In Gen Con, if you're not in the center of one of those larger booths, then clearly you're an up and comer, right? But here at PAX Unplugged, it was almost like, there's a few guys with big booths, but almost everybody had the smaller booths, even some really well established companies. So,
there was a couple of things. Yeah. There's a couple of things to that. As somebody who helps with game publishing and then publishes his own games, I got to do at this convention that I couldn't afford to do at a Gen Con. Mm-hmm. I got to put prototypes of processing in front of like everyday people.
Yeah.
Like, since they were in that open-minded, I'm like, hey, do you want to try this game where humans have been enslaved to process the rest of humanity? What? And I'm like, oh, no, sit down. It'll be fun. And they did. And people were like, and I've gotten emails like, when you sat me down, I was very scared and I did not want to play the game. But after you made me play it, that is super fun. Thank you for making me probe those hipsters. I'm like, that is a great email. That is a fantastic email. I love that so much. And then, like previews and other things, that environment and getting access to like people who are like open to the idea of gaming or play board games secondarily and get their reaction to something is completely invaluable to me as a designer. And I got to do that a lot in the open gaming space. And people were really, really happy with both Curse Court and processing and end of the line when I showed it to them. So it was really good.
Cool.
Well, what's neat about it too, I think because it was a little smaller. Like I was hanging out with the Privateer Press guys. I was hanging out with Will, the guy who built or designed Company of Iron, and we're just chatting. And there weren't mobs of people trying to who knew everybody was and trying to talk to them. So it was, you're right, Seppy. It was much more laid back in a way. Privateer with this massive castle out there you could play on with Bring and Battle, and like only 2 tables were ever in use because it was just people were just kind of learning about it and watching it. They weren't, it was just a very different. It was, I don't know, it was really cool. And I don't know how long that feeling's going to last before it turns into another MegaCon, but it was sort of an interesting thing because it had all the well-runness and all the experience of the veteran PAX organizers, yet it had that feeling of sort of like, a good bit larger, but a Captain Con kind of thing. It was sort of an interesting blend, I thought.
No, I absolutely like it. Gen Con is driven. I mean, you have to get to the new product. You have to get to your events. It's very regimented and so forth and whatnot. And Mike, you'll meet some new people, but you're usually going with your own tribe, because it's a big deal, and to try to win the housing lottery. It's a very different experience. This was super open and inviting, and approachable. And,
the other example I had was the game Weave. Seppy, did you see that game floating around? I mentioned I mentioned this in achievements, and I didn't. So Weave, they were showing Weave at Gen Con, but they weren't ready, and it actually premiered at PAX Unplugged. And Weave is this card game and phone app hybrid where it's an RPG. It's a storytelling RPG where you kind of play the cards like tarot cards, and as you play them, you're describing what happens. And character generation is also with the cards, but you also use the phone. So you put the phone camera in front of the card, and it says, "Oh, that's the owl." And what the owl means in this case is your character has one of the 3 attributes of the knight. And you pick one, and that's how you generate this particular character. So it's like, it was a really interesting thing, and when my daughters saw it at Gen Con, they were all excited about it, like, when's it going to come out, when's it going to be, and we went to PAX, and they were both like, oh my god, Weave's out, and we went and grabbed it and played it, and we had a great time with it. So but at the same time, like, because this was Weave being launched, and at Gen Con, we couldn't even play a demo of it because his table was so mobbed, right? And he wasn't even selling it, he was just showing it, right? So at PAX Unplugged, there's a guy standing there, and there's several people talking to him, but it's not mobbed. And I see there's a pile in the box. I'm like, oh my god, you sell a Weave? He goes, yeah, today's our first premiere. It's your first time you get anywhere. I said, great. Well, what do you think about it? He said, he goes, oh, I'm the designer. I'm like, well, that's awesome. Can I ask you some questions? He goes, yeah. He said, you want a demo? I'm like, so I'm like at the booth buying the copy, not fighting a line, talking to the game designer on launch day. That's hard at Gen Con, right? It's a little bit crazy. You got to get in there early media access and try to get to the front of the thing before the mob is upon you, So it was really pretty cool. And by day 2 and day 3, he was still selling them because there was no one knew that, oh my god, Weave is a really interesting idea and go run and buy it. He was kind of like, I don't know if he was happy or sad about that. Maybe hopefully sold out by the end of the weekend, but it was a neat, for me as someone who's normally like fighting the mob, it was really a neat experience.
Local guy, Patrick Leader of Leader Games, Vast. He has his new game out, Root. He had, I think, a more similar experience to what you're describing as well. So he was running his own demos, right? And Gen Con, it's so overwhelming. I know he has to take time outs, but this one, there's a picture of me with one of his. In my classic way where I cut off my head and he's in the background being important and somebody's disinterested. I think that's it. You can run up and talk to people, but the crowd is also filled with people. We were running Witches of the Revolution as our sort of release for Atlas for the con, and I was shocked by the number of people. Do you know what a deck builder is?
Right.
And it came up like not like a large percentage, but often enough that I had to ask that question.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like,
that's right. People were learning, and that was neat. It was really cool. It was almost like everyone was an ambassador to the hobby. It was just really neat to see people, through new gamers' eyes for the first time, kind of seeing this thing. It was really, it was really cool, and I would highly recommend people try to go again next year because I don't know how long it'll have that flavor before it just becomes massive and well understood, and I hope it can keep some of this because it was really neat. I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, no, if the sum of this you're talking about is the approachability, the openness, and people excited to learn new things, I want that to be the thing.
Yeah. So you have it. So sounds like, Seppy, you're going to go back next year. I'll be.
If Atlas will have me, yes, I will definitely go back. I had a good time.
Would you go on your own, or would you?
If I could, you know me, I'm a con ninja. I will go as a hobo or a con carny with anybody who will take me.
Con carny.
I am not proud.
That's your new subtitle, Seppy. Seppy con carny Yoon.
Seriously, I am not proud. I sold those squirrel dice to get convention to convention like a freaking hobo. Like squirrel, the squirrel dice got sold so that I could afford enough to go to the next trip. So I will continue to do what I've been doing in 2018, and hopefully that will end me back up in PAX Unplugged. But, sometimes you don't get invited back to dinner.
Well, I hope you make it again next year. I'll be going. I would love to drag Craig down, but I think it's right in the heart of his.
If it was the weekend of the play, if it's the weekend of the play or before that, I can't do it. But it sounds like I would love to.
I think you'd enjoy it. It'd be a great.
I hope there's a slight shift in the schedule next year. Would be great. But I'm
going to see you guys at Captain Con next. Then
you are. Yeah, for sure. Well, Seppy, thank you so much. We're going to definitely see you at Captain Con. But thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me, and I'll pay you guys later for being so generous.
No.
Please, we should be paying you.
Save your money.
I heard how you were promoting our show at PAX Unplugged.
Right.
I did.
Shameless.
It was shameless. Seppy reached out from his booth, and he runs up and says, "This guy's famous. The Dice Tower takes his calls." I like that so much when I tweet it. I was like, that's hilarious.
Well, all right. Yeah, I want to say thank you to you guys and especially your listeners. You guys really helped us with the End of the Line Kickstarter. We broke the curse.
You did.
Your listeners made that happen. Nicole made that happen. I know because we tracked where traffic came from, and it was a super big deal for my tiny company, and everybody needs to be thanked again and again.
Well, thank you for making great games, Seppy, and for coming on. We really appreciate it.
All right, you guys are awesome.
All right, thanks, Seppy. Have a good one.
This Jever Notice is brought to you by all of our friends over at Patreon. Today, I would like to thank, in particular, John Gibson, Dean Gilbert, Andrew Glassup, Luis Gomez, and David Grau. Thank you, gentlemen, for stepping up and helping us keep this show on the rails as much as it can be. And thank you all, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, pets, aliens, whoever else has jumped on the bandwagon. We need you, and we appreciate you, and we've got some things in the works to hopefully make this whole Patreon thing work a little better for you down the road, other than just, getting this giant monstrosity of a podcast for free that everybody else gets, but you pay for it. So we're thinking about it. Did you ever notice how quickly you can lose your faith in humanity? This is the 4th attempt to record this Did You Ever Notice? And the last one devolved into vulgarity, which does not happen with me very often, and should indicate to you how frustrated I am, how disgusted I am. And I'm not going to go into details. And at this point, it's probably going to be a much shorter Did You Ever Notice than I anticipated, because my son is upstairs watching Minecraft players on YouTube, having a grand old time, and just being a little boy that I love to spend time with. So I think I'm just going to cut this kind of short. I'm just going to say 2 things have happened recently that really soured me on humanity. One is the Twitter word count or character count doubling. Because to be quite frank, if you're shrill and shrieky on Twitter and now you're doubling it up, can't handle it anymore. And I'm not going to go into specifics. I'm just going to say, take a breather, really, honestly. That's what had me swearing. the thing that really like irked me beyond my ability to really convey is that on Saturday, Reese and I went to see Justice League, and I'm sure I've already spoken about it now because of all this whole time warpiness. I enjoyed it, but it was a bizarre viewing experience that I hope I didn't talk about in achievements in gaming, because that would be boring and obnoxious of me to talk about it twice. So I hope I had the wherewithal not to go into any serious detail in the past, or the future. But anyway, so we went to a theater, one of the few remaining theaters locally that doesn't do reserved seating. So you just go in and you sit wherever you can. And it was crowded. It was a Saturday, at mid-Saturday afternoon. I thought we were going to be okay, but it was really crowded. We got in there and had a grand old time. All sat down, got ourselves all situated. And then a group came and walked in front of us, which is fine. You got to get to your seats. And they sat on the far left. We were on the far right of a row, and they moved to the far left of a row, which is great. Good theater etiquette. Maintain maximum spatial, very. Never mind. I lost the thread of that. Anyway, so they sat over there, but there was a guy with them who was carrying this thick sheaf of papers, had to be 4 inches thick, just like a bundle of writing. Like it looked like maybe a teacher with a bunch of papers to grade, or a lawyer with a bunch of files to read, or something. Just a big, heavy sheaf of papers. I was like, well, that's weird. Didn't think much of it. And then the lights went down for the previews, and I noticed that his phone was on over there, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird and a little obnoxious, but okay. We didn't look too close at it. I just every now and then got a flash out of the corner of my eye during the previews. And the screen was really washed out. I couldn't make out a lot of detail, which I thought was odd. So the preview ends, and then this particular theater, see, the Smart Theater runs all of its ridiculous, stupid, you just paid $20 or $30 to come to the theater, but now we're going to show you commercials. You run all that before the previews, because then they'll get all aggravated. But then they blow off steam with the preview, and they're like, oh, that's cool. Oh, the previews are cool. The trailers are neat. And, and then you go straight into the movie. This place showed one lame trailer before Justice League, which I think is a bit of a shame, and then went into a whole string of ads and did it in reverse, which is very odd. And through the ads, flashes of light out of my left eye, and I'm starting to get like a little nervous. Like, is this guy seriously? What is he doing? So now I'm like looking at him, because who cares about the Coke commercials? And I'm already a lifelong, customer. And he's reading these papers with his cell phone. He's got his cell phone and he's got the flashlight on, and he's reading these papers in his lap. And I'm thinking, well, that's going to stop, right? I mean, nobody would do that through into a movie. But at the same time, I got this feeling, humanity, yep, sliding towards the abyss. Here we go, right there, Exhibit A, but maybe not. Okay. So the movie starts, and I'm blinded, because now it's dark in the theater, and this guy is using his flashlight to read papers, to do paperwork in the theater. And I couldn't handle it. I do not like confrontation. I avoid confrontation whenever possible. But I can't handle my movie-going experience like dealt with in that way. And so I jumped up. I leapt over several people intervening between us. My voice in my head going, okay, keep it calm. Except that, your adrenaline is getting pumped up, especially if you don't like confrontation. So you have a tendency to react in those moments where you are driven to confrontation. And I said, "Excuse me, could you turn your phone off?" And the guy looked up and was like, "What?" And my head went, that was enough. He's going to turn it off. That's enough. And then I heard my mouth go, "You're blinding half the theater." And then my head went, that was too much. He wasn't blinding half the theater. He was, for all I know, he was only blinding me. But as I turned around, a whole bunch of people were like, "Thank you. Oh God, thank you." One guy applauded, little golf clap. And I was like, okay. So I sat down, and the guy was harumphing and hurrahing over there, but he turned his phone off. So I was like, great. Now what's going to happen? I bet this movie's got, post-credit clips, and what am I going to do? Is that guy like, oh, God, so I'm neurotic. So that just all gets churned up in there. But then I realize that even with that guy off, I still can't tell what's going on because the screen is all washed out. It's all foggy. I don't know what's going on. And then another family comes in, family of 4. Actually, I think it was 4 young people, like, late teens, early 20s, with their cell phone flashlights on because they need to find a seat. No big deal. They're only 10 minutes late to the movie, and the theater is really crowded. And they're, oh, sorry, pardon me. And the guy who had applauded, who sat next to me, like leaned over and was like, you can't win sometimes. And I was like, I know, seriously, that's ridiculous. And then they left, and then the lights came back on in the theater because someone in theater management decided that ticking off the 100 people sitting in the theater so that these 4 people could get a seat together in a crowded theater having come 10 minutes late made economic sense. So that was a bad choice. And then everybody was like, oh, well, somebody's going to have to go tell them to turn it back off. And they were all looking at me because clearly I have now been established as that guy. And I'm like, I'm not going out. So anyway, so they were like, oh, okay. And then the lights turned down. Still couldn't see because it was all foggy and I didn't know what was going on. And in my head, I'm like, oh, does this mean I shouldn't, is this legitimate, to complain about? And then the guy in front of me, his wife, who I didn't even notice leaving, comes back and in a full voice, as if she's alone with him in the middle of a field, miles away from the nearest person, starts saying, yeah, they've just said there's nothing they can do. They said we could have our money back, but that's it. And I'm like, oh, geez. Okay. So I'm looking around and everybody's now shifting around. So it's not just me. And I lean over to Reese. I'm like, Reese, can you see? Not thinking it's a 7-year-old, so he's used to not being able to see, and I know he's got a clear view of the screen. So he says, yep. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll just sit here. And then I think, wait a minute. He means, is there anything in his way? So I lean over again and I say, buddy, can you tell what you're seeing? And he goes, nope. I'm like, okay, so you can't tell, what's going on right now on the screen? No, I think they're fighting. Spoiler alert, there's fighting in Justice League. And I was like, yeah, okay, you want to go try to find another place to watch it? He was like, yep. So we left. And we eventually went and saw it at a theater that was closer to our house, which was more convenient. And at the end of that, we were getting up to leave, one of my closest friends, Russ's brother, actually, and his wife and his daughter were sitting in the front row. They were like, hey, Craig! It was like the most bizarre thing ever, although they didn't notice us when we walked in, which is weird. But anyway, so yeah, you know what? If you're doing paperwork in a theater, you deserve to have somebody put sugar in your gas tank in the parking lot while you're doing it or something. If that blows up, that's not what I mean. I'm trying baloney on your hood or something like that. Any of a number of those things that I now see, I'm nervous. Does sugar in a gas tank explode? I hope not, because that's not what I mean. I don't mean violent bodily injury. I mean just really obnoxious, annoying things happen to you for the rest of the day. Maybe a week. I don't know. A month? Who knows? Anyway, look, this was going to be short. Now I've got to go put my kid to bed. So that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. I did a short run video blog where I was in a hover tank and I did stuff.
Okay, well that's teach his own.
Hey, nothing wrong with hover tanks.
We're not here to.
Oh my god, I love me a hover tank. Oh, I do. I love it.
How can you go wrong with a hover tank? That's your next game, Seppy. Hover tank or die.
Hover tank or die.
Right.